Chapter 1209. What Annabelle didn't know was that the visit of this patrol officer named Staffen had already been labeled as a hostile visitor by her master. However, Annabelle had the same idea. Seeing that Staffen was pretending to be serious, but his pair of eyes frequently swept back and forth on her body with a somewhat obscene look, Annabelle didn't think that such a person would come to invite Noah to have a meal together. At that moment, Annabelle planned to drive all these people away without hesitation. However, before that, Noah's voice slowly echoed in the room. "Annabelle, let him in." "Yes." Annabelle responded without any hesitation, and dodged to the side, giving way to the door, and spoke coldly without even looking at Staffen. "My master wants you to go in." Hearing this, Staffen was stunned, and then the obscene look in his eyes turned into outright jealousy. If it were any other time, if someone dared to speak to Staffen in such a rude tone, Staffen would have already lost his temper. Now, the reason why Staffen didn't lose his temper was not that he had become magnanimous, but that he was blinded by jealousy. As for the reason for jealousy, it couldn't be simpler. A mere businessman can actually have such an outrageously beautiful subordinate. It's really unfair. Annabelle's statement of "my master" clearly explained her relationship with Noah. Looking at Annabelle's frosty expression, but she still didn't lose her beauty, and instead added a bit of the temperament of an ice beauty, Staffen's heart really became itchy. If there's a chance? With this thought, the fat on Staffen's face piled up into an expression that couldn't be more fake. Then he walked into the room with his head held high. The group of soldiers behind Staffen just wanted to follow in, but Annabelle blocked the door in a flash. Glancing at the soldiers who were stunned, Annabelle spoke with a blank expression. "Sir Noah didn't let you follow in." The soldiers were speechless. However, that's true. As an ordinary soldier, if they didn't obtain permission, they would be sentenced for breaking into someone's residence. Sir Tupan frowned and waved his hand impatiently. "You guys can wait outside." All the soldiers nodded in agreement. Then Staffen looked into the room. He saw that Noah was still sitting in front of the table, holding a cup of black tea in his hand and sipping it. Seeing that Noah was ignoring him, the corner of Steve's mouth twitched. He was about to get angry, but he thought of something and suppressed his anger. Little did he know that Noah had seen this scene clearly. Thus, Noah curled his lips and smiled. He placed the teacup in his hand on the table and made an inviting gesture to the seat opposite him. "Mr. Staffen, aren't you going to sit down first?" "There's no need for that," Staffen said to Noah in a businesslike manner with a straight face. "I'm here on official business." "You're Noah Doria, right?" "That's right." Noah nodded and smiled. "I wonder why you're here on official business, Mr. Patrol Officer? My place can't be compared to those luxurious offices." "Are you playing word games with me, Mr. Noah?" Sure Tupan couldn't help but reveal a hint of anger. "Don't play dumb. You should know very well why I'm here." "I can't pretend that I didn't hear that." Noah shrugged. "Mr. Patrol Officer, you're wrong. I don't know why you're here. It's just that." Speaking of this, Noah looked at Sure Tupan with a meaningful gaze. "It shouldn't be anything good, right?" Sure Tupan's face was flushed red. He was infuriated. As the patrol officer of the royal city, he was in charge of the security of the royal city. In the past, whenever Sure Tupan looked for someone in the name of carrying out official business, even if that person was a famous tycoon, who wouldn't be polite to Sure Tupan because they were worried that Sure Tupan would take advantage of them. But now, a mere merchant not only didn't treat Sure Tupan with respect, but also displayed an extremely carefree attitude. For someone like Sure Tupan who thought that he was in a high position, it was absolutely unbearable. "Mr. Noah, you can laugh as much as you want now. You won't be able to laugh later." Sure Tupan's tone became firm as he shouted at Noah. "As far as we know, Mr. Noah seems to have been selling a large amount of steel in the royal city recently. Is that true?" "That's true." Noah nodded nonchalantly. "What's wrong? Could it be that doing business in the royal city is considered disrupting public order?" "If it's just doing business, then of course not," Sure Yafen said with a disgusting tone. "It's just that that's only if the goods are legal." Hearing this, Noah roughly understood what Shurtuppan was trying to say. Mr. Noah, other than you, no one has been able to sell such a large amount of steel. After all, steel is very precious. Shurtuppan shook his head as he spoke. In the royal city, we have never heard of a place where steel can be mined in such a large amount. So, we have the right to suspect that the steel you are selling in the royal city was obtained through illegal means. Shurtuppan revealed a victorious smile after he finished speaking. For example, the illegal extraction of stainless steel in the nobles' territories without permission. I see. Noah nodded without any change in his expression. So, what are you going to do, Mr. Patrol Officer? Investigate, of course. Shurtuppan said matter-of-factly. Please come with us and accept our investigation. Shurtuppan, who was speaking, did not notice. Behind him, Annabelle slowly placed her hand on the hilt of the sword at her waist. If Noah did not stop her, it would only take a second for Shurtuppan's head to come in contact with the ground along with a large amount of blood. In this regard, Noah only looked at Shurtuppan's victorious face as if he wanted to see through Shurtuppan's thoughts. After a while, he suddenly smiled. I understand. Noah stood up and spoke indifferently. Then, I will go with you, Mr. Patrol Officer. Hearing this, Shurtuppan revealed a victorious smile. Annabelle silently put her sword back into the sheath at her waist. However, the way she looked at Shurtuppan was as if she was looking at a dead person. There was no emotion in her eyes. After that, under Shurtuppan's lead, Noah and Annabelle walked out of the hotel together. There was a soldier standing around them, as if to protect them and also as if to escort them as they walked into the depths of the imperial city. However, halfway through the main street, Shurtuppan suddenly turned into a dark alley and continued to walk forward as if nothing had happened. Sir Noah, Annabelle said softly. However, before she could continue, Noah raised his hand and interrupted her. Don't worry, Noah said concisely. I have my own plans. Annabelle muttered to herself for a while, then nodded and did not say anything else. Just like that, under Shurtuppan's lead, the group walked quite a distance. It was not until 30 minutes later that the destination came into view. Instead of calling it a destination, it was more like a towering wall that appeared in Noah's eyes. The wall completely isolated the inner and outer space, forming a heavy atmosphere. That atmosphere made people think of a prison, not an important administrative area. Shurtuppan didn't seem to care about Noah's thoughts at all. He continued to walk forward, and it didn't take long for him to find a lattice-shaped door in the corner of the wall. We're here. Shurtuppan turned his head at this time and looked at Noah patiently. Please come in with us, Mr. Noah. Looking at Shurtuppan, it seemed that if Noah didn't go in, he would immediately send someone to take Noah in. However, Noah's performance was different from what Shurtuppan imagined. Noah ignored Staven, or rather, it was as if Staven was no longer of any use. Noah ignored him and walked through the door. A courtyard appeared in front of Noah. Chapter 12:10. The courtyard that appeared in front of Noah's eyes was not like the dark alleys he was in. It gave off a gloomy atmosphere. The trees were trimmed neatly and tidily. The ground was also swept clean. In such a courtyard, there was a small path that extended from the door Noah was in. It was directly connected to an open space that looked like a training ground. The ground was covered with hard stone bricks. On that open space, a group of about 30 people were either sitting or standing. They were looking in the direction of the door, and their gazes on Noah were full of evil intentions. Bang! Almost at the same time, a loud sound of a door closing reverberated behind Noah. He did not need to turn his head to know that the door at the entrance had been closed. Looking around, one by one, people who had been hiding in unknown places slowly walked out from all directions. They all had the same malicious smile on their faces as the people in the open space. In other words, at this moment, the entire courtyard was surrounded by people who looked extremely violent. In the center of the encirclement were Noah and Annabelle. As for Starvan, he walked forward with his head held high under the protection of the violent people around him. He walked past Noah with his head held high. He did not even look at Noah, as if he would feel that he was not ostentatious enough. It really reminded one of the idiom, "The fox uses the tiger's might to intimidate others." In such a manner, Stoffen finally walked to the side of a man. He was bald, with explosive muscles all over his body and a beast tattoo on his face. He was exuding a ferocious aura from head to toe. "Mr. Jie Luo." Stoffen showed a fawning smile to the bald man. "I've brought him to you. You've done well." The man named Jie Luo smiled satisfactorily. "Don't worry. I'll put in a good word for you in front of those aristocrats. I'll let you know that cooperating with the Yakuza is definitely beneficial and harmless." "Thank you, Mr. Jie Luo." Stoffen was instantly overjoyed and nodded repeatedly. Instead, it was Noah who raised his eyebrows and looked at Jie Luo with a different gaze. "You're from the Yakuza? To be more precise, you should say that we're from the Yakuza's security department." Jie Luo grinned. "And I'm the manager of the Yakuza's security department." Jie Luo. Security department. Noah was a little surprised and looked at the people around him. "So you're saying that there's a 6-armed centipede that's rumored to be comparable to a fine steel adventurer here? You know quite a lot." Jie Luo was also a little surprised and spread his hands. "Since they've already named you, then come out and meet our big client." As soon as he finished speaking, 5 people walked out from the crowd behind Jie Luo and stood behind him. Standing on the far left was a man wearing a black robe with a hood. The lower hem of the robe was embroidered with a flame-like pattern with bright red threads. The face under the hood could not be seen, and there was not a trace of life on his body. He was a very strange person. "I'm Daiwanok." Beside the black-robed Yakuza was a woman wearing a thin silk robe, with gold rings on her wrists and ankles, and 6 scimitars hanging from her belt. "I'm Adeline." Standing next to the woman who called herself Estrian was a handsome man in a brocade robe with a vest and coat embroidered with gold thread, and a thin sword in his hand. "I'm Momvest." Standing beside the self-proclaimed Mamvest was a warrior with a sword firmly sheathed in his scabbard, protected by a full body armor without any decorations. "I'm Peshlian." As for the man who called himself Peshlian, on the rightmost side, there was a man with pale skin, sharp eyes, and thin cheeks. He looked like a bird of prey. "I'm Dun Lunt." The 5 people who reported their names stood behind Jie Luo, making him look like an artist who was showing off his work that he was proud of. He spread his arms and laughed loudly. "Together with me and Jie Luo, we are the strongest people in the Yakuza's security department's 6 arms." Following Jie Luo's laughter, the other 5 people also raised their heads and puffed out their chests, obviously feeling proud. However, 6 Arms Group did not notice. In front, Noah's gaze swept across 6 Arms Group one by one. After a while, the corners of his mouth lifted slightly, and he muttered to himself, "I've searched high and low for it, only to find it by sheer luck." Noah did not expect that the strongest group of thugs in the Yakuza would actually send themselves to his doorstep. There was really nothing better than this. Therefore, Noah laughed, laughing very happily. That laughter made Jie Luo's laughter stop abruptly. Slowly withdrawing the smile on his face, Jie Luo looked at Noah. His eyes were like those of a fugitive, full of ruthlessness. "Kid, you've been tricked into coming here, and you can still laugh? Why can't I laugh?" Noah shrugged and glanced at Stoffen. "If I really only found out now that I've been tricked, perhaps I would be very surprised. However, I'll have to trouble you to find someone with better means to trick me next time. Let that pig over there strut around in front of me. If it weren't for my patience, I would have laughed my lungs out long ago." "You? What did you say?" Stoffen's fat face instantly turned the color of a pig's liver due to his anger. "You said I'm a pig? What? Don't tell me that people in this world don't have the habit of calling those who are so stupid that they have no bottom line as pigs?" Noah laughed out loud. "Moreover, not only is your brain as stupid as a pig, even the fat on your body is no different from a pig's. Then, if you're not a pig, what is a pig?" You! Stoffen was so angry that his hand trembled as he pointed at Noah. Jie Luo, on the other hand, stared at Noah and laughed coldly. "So, you knew from the beginning that you've been tricked? I had no choice. Noah suddenly smiled. Who asked that pig over there to say that the steel I was selling was illegally mined? Oh, Jialuo asked curiously. Is there a problem with that? At first glance, there isn't a problem. After all, steel is indeed a very precious metal. No one would be able to obtain such a large amount of steel in one go. However, everyone knows this problem, including those merchants who bought steel from me. Noah looked at Jialuo. Since that's the case, as merchants who value peace, if those fellows weren't certain that my steel came from a clean source, why would they buy from me at the risk of being banned? That's impossible. Stoffen let out a squeal that sounded like a pig being slaughtered. As I said earlier, no one would be able to obtain such a large amount of steel. Since that's the case, how could those merchants be so sure that your steel came from a clean source? That's right. Jialuo also rebutted. If your steel came from a clean source, then why didn't I find out where the steel came from and how it was transported to the capital when I investigated beforehand? Just because it came from a clean source doesn't mean that everything has to be revealed. Noah pursed his lips. As long as there's someone who can absolutely guarantee that the steel is clean, and this guarantee is approved by the king, wouldn't that be enough? Wah! Jialuo and Stoffen were both stunned. Do you understand now? Noah said with a half-smile. I have someone above me. Moreover, this person is extremely important in the kingdom. With him as my guarantor, those soldiers won't foolishly come to me and say that my things are unclean and that they need to be investigated. Unless, Noah looked at Stoffen, whose face had completely darkened, and said sarcastically, unless that person didn't receive a report of an illegal transaction at all, and used this as an excuse to make me obedient for personal reasons. Stoffen's lips trembled. Evidently, Noah had hit the nail on the head. As for Jialuo, he started clapping. I see, we really didn't think of this. Saying this, Jialuo narrowed his eyes and looked at Noah with a cold gaze. Since you know that you've been deceived, you still dare to come along? What are you relying on? Noah didn't answer his question. What's your motive for bringing me here? Chapter 12:11. Noah's words caused Jialuo's eyebrows to twitch slightly as he said this with a hidden meaning. He seemed to be implying something as he said, Kid, don't you know what kind of business we, the Hatchy Fingers, do? What kind of business? Noah also raised his eyebrows, but replied nonchalantly. I heard that the Hatchy Fingers has 8 departments that are involved in different businesses, including slave trading, assassination, smuggling, theft, drug dealing, bodyguarding, finance, and gambling. There are a total of 8 types of businesses, each of which can't see the light of day. That's right. Jialuo didn't seem to mind Noah's sarcasm as he continued speaking. And the business that we, the Hatchy Fingers Security Department, are in charge of is bodyguarding. Bodyguards? Noah looked around at the criminals with malicious smiles on their faces. He couldn't help but twitch his mouth. And then, what does that have to do with you bringing me to this place? Didn't I say just now? You're our big client, right? Jialuo stretched out a hand and clenched it into a fist bit by bit as if he was pulling a finger. That hand made cracking sounds as he grinned. You've sold so much steel, I'm sure you've earned quite a bit. In the eyes of many, you're a fat sheep that can't get any fatter. Furthermore, the security of the kingdom isn't very good. Kid, don't tell me you've never thought of hiring some bodyguards? Hearing this, Noah narrowed his eyes. He finally understood Jialuo's motive. Simply put, this guy wanted to collect the so-called protection fee from Noah. Furthermore, it was the type that couldn't be resisted. Since you know about the 6 arms, then you should also know about our capabilities, right? Jialuo grinned maliciously at Noah. As long as you cooperate with me, I guarantee that your future path will be very smooth. No one will have any ideas about you. How about that? Oh! Noah's expression didn't change as he replied indifferently. Then, how much do I have to pay to hire the Hatchy Fingers Security Department? Not much. Jialuo looked straight at Noah, his eyes revealing the ferocity of a ferocious beast staring at its prey. How much did you earn in the capital? I want 80% of it. Consider it a friendly price. As soon as these words were said, the surrounding outlaws immediately laughed one by one. On the other side, although Stefan was still enraged by Noah's words, he felt that his hatred had been vented. 80%? That wasn't a collaboration at all, but a exploitation, right? With the amount of steel that Noah sold, 80% of the profits was enough to buy 1 or 2 pieces of land, not to mention hiring bodyguards. Under such circumstances, did Jieluo intend to take away 80%? Even asking for an exorbitant price was not enough to describe his greed. Noah knew this, Stark knew this, and Jieluo himself naturally knew this as well. However, Jieluo had never thought of hiding anything. What? Can't accept it? Jieluo sneered. It's best if you accept it. That way, you can at least take the remaining 20% and return home safely. There was no need to confirm what he meant. Jieluo gave Noah only 2 choices. One was to obediently hand over the 80% of the profits from selling the steel. In that case, Noah would be able to take the remaining 20% and leave the imperial city safely. The other was to reject the so-called collaboration. That way, everyone present could guarantee that when night fell, a person selling steel in large quantities would disappear without a trace, and all the money he earned would go into Jieluo's pocket. That was all there was to it. This was the Hatchy Fingers. They were the largest criminal syndicate in the kingdom of Yestage. The surrounding atmosphere suddenly became sinister due to Jieluo's undisguised malice. The repulsive outlaws slowly took a step closer to Noah with sinister smiles on their faces. Stark, on the other hand, took a step back and looked at Noah with delight in his eyes. Jieluo, on the other hand, stood motionless with the other 5 members of the 6 Arms. They had cold smiles on their faces, looking as if they had Noah in their grasp. If it had been anyone else, even Gu Jiefu, in such a situation, they would have felt a sense of despair. The guards of the Hatchy Fingers were the hired thugs of the largest criminal syndicate in the kingdom. It was definitely possible to say that there were many experts within. At least, there wasn't a single person in this courtyard who was below level 10. The weakest one was comparable to a silver-level adventurer. Furthermore, the 6 Arms led by Jieluo were all existences comparable to the highest-level adventurers of the fine steel level. They were at least level 29. Even Gu Jiefu would have to bear a grudge against all the members of the 6 Arms. In addition to the pawns around them, who wouldn't feel despair in the kingdom? Unfortunately, in the face of such a situation, Noah only looked at Jieluo in front of him. After a while, he finally sighed and said this. Ignorance is definitely not a mistake, but when ignorance reaches a certain level, even if it's not a mistake, it's so stupid that it's laughable. The cold smile on Jieluo's face froze slightly. He slowly withdrew it, and a murderous look appeared in his eyes. Kid, are you courting death? Noah glanced at Jieluo. Then, he suddenly smiled as if he had thought of something. Do you really want me to hire you as my bodyguards? Huh? Jieluo's expression darkened, and there was some anger in his tone. We've already come to this point. What else do you want to say? I want to say that it's not impossible to hire you as my bodyguards, Noah said as he spread out his hands. However, you also said that the kingdom's security isn't good. Since I want to hire bodyguards, I don't need those incompetent idiots. So? Jieluo was so angry that he laughed. Are you saying that we're all incompetent idiots in your eyes? Because of his fury, Jieluo's body was already erupting with an extremely ferocious aura. He was like a terrifying beast, incomparably frightening. It wasn't just Jieluo. Even the rest of the 6 Arms people had faces full of anger, and their bodies more or less released an astonishing aura. However, in the face of that ferocious aura that was enough to make an ordinary person's legs go soft, Noah's expression was calm as he continued to speak. Whether we're incompetent idiots or not, we'll know once we give it a try. After saying that, Noah ignored the furious looks on Jieluo's and the rest's faces and spoke indifferently without turning his head. Annabelle. Yes. Annabelle looked as if she had been waiting for Noah's call for a long time. She raised her head and walked in front of Noah with a frosty expression. Looking at the cold-faced Annabelle, the surrounding outlaws were startled at first, but soon after, Their faces revealed an evil expression at the same time. That expression was simply as if they were looking at a delicious meal. Only Jieluo looked at Noah with a gloomy expression and spoke in a deep voice. "What exactly do you want?" From Jieluo's incomparably gloomy expression and extremely oppressive voice, it could be felt that this underworld leader was about to reach the limit of his patience. Unfortunately, Noah was still trampling on this limit. "This is my follower. As for her name, there's no need to specifically say." Noah faintly smiled. "As you can see, my safety is in Annabelle's charge. What you want to snatch away is her job. Since that's the case, I'll give you a chance." Noah pointed at Annabelle and spoke with a mocking expression. "As long as you can defeat my follower, I'll do as you wish and obediently offer you what you want. Moreover, it's not just 80%, but 100% of everything." The entire crowd suddenly went silent. "Ha ha, ha ha ha, ha 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 ha." Jieluo suddenly laughed out loud. There wasn't the slightest bit of amusement in that laughter. There was only anger that made one's heart tremble. "Very good, boy. You've successfully angered me," Jieluo roared. "Since that's the case, I'll first torture this woman, then cut you into 1,000 pieces, and then throw you all into the dungeon to feed the worms." Jieluo's words elicited a reaction from Annabelle. "Worms?" Annabelle suddenly raised her head, her eyes surging with an astonishingly cold light. "To me, you're all worms. A group of inferior human beings." As soon as she finished speaking, Annabelle fiercely spread out her hands, and the palms of both hands burst out with dazzling electric light, turning into 2 huge electric balls. Second-level magic enhancement, electric shock ball. The next moment, the violent electric balls shot out and landed directly in the courtyard. Bang! The sound of an explosion resounded. Chapter 12:12. Pong! When the explosion that was mixed with violent electric currents shook the entire courtyard of the Hatchibyunga Guard Department. The astonishing impact carried rioting electric sparks and spread out in all directions. Beep, beep! At the center of the impact, violent electric arcs jumped back and forth like streaks of lightning, running back and forth in the space as if they were boiling. Ah! Those outlaws who didn't have time to react were all covered by the violent electric arcs that ran back and forth like lightning. Their bodies emitted a burnt smell as they let out mournful screams. Instantly, in the entire courtyard, those thugs from the Hakihosha Guard Department, who were feared by everyone, were all roasted by the violent electric arcs. They fell to the ground one after another, never to get up again. Only the group of 6 arms, led by Jieluo, reacted at the critical moment, and all of them retreated rapidly, avoiding the violent impact and electric currents that came head-on. Thus, when the violent shock waves and arcs of lightning that shook the entire courtyard gradually subsided and the surroundings regained its tranquility, apart from Jieluo's group of 6 adventurers who could match the highest level of fine steel rank, the others all fell to the ground, their bodies twitching incessantly. Looking at this scene, Annabelle, who still had her hands spread open and some electric arcs flickering in her palms, spoke with contempt. "They're just like frogs." This sentence completely infuriated Jieluo's group. This was especially so for the only female among the 6 arms, called Edessa. When she saw the disdain on Annabelle's stunning beauty, the jealousy in her heart triggered a strong anger, causing Edessa to fiercely slap the scimitar at her waist. Following Estrian's action, the 6 scimitars hanging on her waist suddenly floated up on their own, as if there were 6 invisible people holding those scimitars. They extremely nimbly drew a perfect trajectory around Estrian's body and violently swept out. Shio, 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 shio. The scimitars that were flickering with a deadly cold light cut through the space, and with a sharp sound, they mercilessly slashed at Annabelle from 6 completely different directions. Seeing those scimitars mercilessly slashing at her, Annabelle just opened her red lips slightly. Shield wall. A flash of light rose from Annabelle's body, as if turning into an invisible mirror, enveloping Annabelle's whole body. Clang, 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 clang. With a sharp sound, the 6 scimitars slashed at the invisible mirror like flash one by one, causing a crisp sound of collision, and they were knocked away one by one. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the group of 6 arms, led by Jia changed. The spell called Shield Wall was a very common type of physical defense spell. However, common meant that it wasn't very special and its rank was not very high. Very high. At the very least, a defensive magic of this rank should be easily broken by Edstelin's strength. However, Edstelin's attack didn't even cause the slightest bit of damage. What did that prove? It proved that Annabelle's strength was far beyond that of a magic of this rank, so she was able to allocate a large amount of mana to increase the defensive power of the shield wall. And to be able to so easily block the attack of Edstelin, one of the 6 arms, with a low-level magic, meant that Annabelle's strength wasn't inferior to Edstelin's. So that's how it is. Another person who can match a fine steel adventurer? Jia face was gloomy. This is what you're counting on? Jia stared at Annabelle, and after adjusting his body slightly, he abruptly stomped his feet on the ground. With a loud bang, Jia seemed to have turned into a ferocious beast, charging straight at Annabelle. Then let me show you who's the useless idiot. After saying that, Jia was in midair, but he clenched his fist fiercely. The muscles on his arm bulged explosively, and even ferocious blue veins appeared. He suddenly punched at Annabelle. Wherever the fist passed, the air waves in the surrounding space rolled back and forth, bringing about a sonic boom. The momentum was not small. It was just an ordinary punch, but it was able to reach such a level. Noah's eyes flashed as he watched from behind. A warrior monk? That's right. Jia profession was a warrior monk. Moreover, he was a powerful warrior monk who had at least trained his body to the extent of being as hard as mithril. Therefore, if Annabelle used the shield wall to defend against this punch, it would definitely be shattered in an instant, and she would even be severely injured. Knowing this, Annabelle still didn't move an inch. She only looked at the approaching Jia with a ferocious expression, and slowly extended a finger. Lightning strike! A dazzling electric arc suddenly flickered from the tip of Annabelle's finger. Finally, like lightning, it shot violently at Jia who was still in midair. A trifling third-rank spell. Jia roared angrily. Don't underestimate me. With a furious roar, Jia directly punched at the lightning that shot violently at him. He actually didn't dodge or evade the spell, using his body to meet it. Bang! Along with the collision between the fist and the lightning, an astonishing impact once again appeared in midair. It was as if a substantial wave of wind had appeared, causing ripples in the air. It was also at this moment that a phantom suddenly flashed behind Annabelle. Like a mirage, it emerged from illusion to reality. It was an illusion, a spell specially used to confuse people's vision. The person who used it was one of the 6 arms, Dune Lunt. With a sinister smile, Dune Lunt fiercely pulled out the long sword at his waist. Take her down! The long sword tore through the air and suddenly slashed fiercely at Annabelle's neck. Feeling the tearing sound of the wind behind her, Annabelle's eyes narrowed. Dimensional movement! The next moment, Annabelle's figure suddenly disappeared from where she was, causing Dune Lunt's determined sword to hit empty air. Wah! Dune Lunt was astonished. However, no matter how astonished he was at this moment, he had already exposed his biggest flaw. Poochie! With a tearing sound, a long sword pierced through Dune Lunt's chest, bringing with it dark red blood that splashed all over the ground. Skashalant's eyes bulged. His neck seemed to have been wound up as he lowered his head stiffly. When he saw the long sword that had pierced through his chest, blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He squeezed out a voice with great difficulty. No. This was Dune Lunt's last regret. Then, the long sword was pulled out fiercely, causing Dune Lunt to fall to the ground, revealing Annabelle's figure standing behind him. Looking at Dune Lunt, who was sprawled on the ground with his arms and legs spread out, and the ground beneath him was gradually dyed red with blood, Annabelle murmured expressionlessly. Is it a beetle this time? It was indeed true. Dune Lunt's appearance of lying on the ground with his arms and legs spread out was exactly the same as a beetle. Seeing Dune Lunt die in front of them, the members of 6 arms, including Jia were all stunned for a moment. It's too troublesome to deal with them one by one. We can't let Sir Noah wait for too long. Annabel raised her eyes and looked ahead. Then let's deal with them once and for all. While saying this, Annabel clapped her hands fiercely in the midst of a pa sound. Hum! A burst of terrifying magic power burst out from Annabel's body. Then, Annabel slowly opened her palms. Beep, beep, beep. A white lightning arc like a flood dragon flickered between Annabel's palms. On it, a dazzling white light bloomed, illuminating the entire surrounding space. Magic Enhancement Chain Dragon Thunder. In the next instant, a white arc of lightning shot up into the sky from Annabel's palm, hovering in the air. Soon after, like a dragon descending from the sky, it brought along a dazzling white light as it rubbed against the air, heavily landing at the position of the 6 arms members who couldn't react in time. Boom! A thunderous sound resounded through the sky. Chapter 12-13. When the dragon-like arcs of lightning landed heavily in the courtyard, almost everyone in the royal city saw this scene. However, in the eyes of others, it was nothing more than a bolt of lightning. Such a bolt of lightning shattered the ground of the courtyard of the Hatchabunga Guard Department, causing a violent impact that blew up inch by inch of the ground. The soil was dug up, and the gravel was splashed up. A large number of arcs of lightning were like crazy pythons scurrying back and forth. The entire space was shrouded in dazzling lightning. No one knew how long this scene lasted. After a long time, when the dazzling white light that shrouded the entire space slowly faded away, the violent impact and crazy arcs of lightning that acted in the space also subsided little by little. The originally well-decorated courtyard had already changed its appearance greatly. A pit appeared on the ground. With Jaluo as the leader, Dianok, Estrian, Mamvist, Peshlian, and even Chlund, who was stabbed in the chest by Annabel and died, were all lying in this pit. Occasionally, 1 or 2 electric currents would run through their bodies. Every time an electric current ran through this group of people, their bodies would jump a little, as if they were lying on the ground and bouncing their bodies slightly. Seeing this, Annabel, who was standing in front of the pit, said sarcastically, "They really do look like fleas." After saying that, Annabel directly turned around and walked in the direction of Noah. From the beginning to the end, it could be said that Annabel didn't look directly at the group of strong people who were said to be comparable to the highest level of human fine steel adventurers. Under such circumstances, from the time Noah sent Annabel to fight, to the time when the strongest fighters of the Hatchabunga Guard were all defeated, the whole process didn't even take 5 minutes. In just 5 minutes, even Gu Jiefu, who had the title of the strongest warrior in the kingdom, and Songqiang, who was also a fine steel adventurer, had to pay attention to 6 arms, but in Annabel's hands they were easily defeated. The reason was very simple. The magic that Annabel used was called Chain Dragon Lightning, which was magic above the 7th rank. As for magic spells above the 7th level, that was a mythical realm that humans could not touch. Even if Jialuo and his party were known as elite steel-tier adventurers, as long as they were humans, they could only nurse a grievance when faced with magic that humans were unable to touch. Even if there were 10 more fine steel adventurers, it would still be the same. He believed that if this matter was publicized, 99 out of 100 people would choose to laugh it off and think that it was just a rumor. The remaining one would only be skeptical, right? But for Annabel, the person in question, this was nothing more than that. "My apologies, Lord Noah." Annabel's cold and emotionless appearance completely melted in front of Noah, turning into a respect that could drive people crazy. "I spent some time on those insects. There's nothing to apologize for, Annabel." Noah smiled at Annabel. "You've done well. Thank you for your hard work." "Yes." Only then did Annabel feel relieved. Noah cast his gaze into the pit and looked at Jialuo, who was lying on the ground with 1 or 2 electric currents running through his body from time to time. He curled his lips and said, "Now, do you know who's the useless idiot?" In the pit, Jialuo's body jerked violently in a way that it had not done before. In response, Noah did not even look at it and turned around directly. "This is probably the headquarters of the Yakumo garrison. Let's search here and we should be able to get a lot of rewards." "Yes, Lord Noah." Annabel nodded obediently. Just as Annabelle was about to follow behind Noah and leave the scene together, her expression suddenly changed. Bang! Following a muffled stomping sound, Jeluo, who was originally lying on the ground, suddenly leaped up like a prostrating cheetah. Bouncing his body up, the aura on his body abruptly surged as his figure violently rushed out. Moreover, it was in the direction of Noah. As the leader of the six arms that was comparable to a fine steel adventurer, Jeluo's strength was naturally the strongest in the six arms. Jeluo was confident that even if he were to face the kingdom's strongest warrior, Gojefu, he would definitely not lose. However, today Jeluo and all the other members of the six arms couldn't even last 5 minutes against Annabelle. Coupled with the chain dragon thunder, just now, Jeluo knew that even if he were to risk his life, he would definitely not be a match for Annabelle. Jeluo was naturally filled with disbelief about Annabelle's strength. However, compared to disbelief, Jeluo's heart was filled with hatred for Noah, who had looked down on him from beginning to end and treated him like a fool, making him behave like a clown. Driven by hatred, Jeluo turned into a desperado. He did not care about Annabelle, who was still by Noah's side, and stared fixedly at Noah, who was getting closer and closer. The blood at the corner of his mouth rendered his face extremely sinister as he roared hysterically. "Even if I die, I'll drag you down to hell with me." The distance between him and Noah was instantly reduced to 0. Jeluo clenched his fists tightly, condensing an extremely terrifying force in his fists, and blasted it violently at Noah. This punch brought about a strong oppressive wind. The strong wind blew the fringe in front of Noah's forehead, exposing a pair of deep, dark eyes to Jeluo's distorted vision due to extreme hatred. However, Jeluo simply could not see the excessive hatred. In the face of what could be said to be the most powerful attack of his life, Noah's pitch-black eyes did not show any fear, panic, or even the slightest fluctuation. There was only complete and utter calmness. Bang! A muffled sound that made one's heart contract abruptly reverberated through the entire surrounding space, causing a ring of shockwaves to spread out like sound waves, rippling through the extremely dilapidated courtyard. At this moment, Jeluo, who had unleashed the most powerful punch of his life, slowly narrowed his eyes until they were the size of a needle tip. This was because that blow, which was enough to shatter a huge rock, had been easily blocked by a hand and grasped in the palm of his hand. "You seem to have misunderstood something, right?" Following this calm voice, the hand that had easily received Jeluo's strongest punch slowly clenched, tightly clenching Jeluo's fist within. "When I said that you're a useless idiot, I didn't mean that my follower could casually defeat you." Saying this, Noah's gaze met Jeluo's pupils, which had shrunk to the size of a needle tip, and he sneered. "Rather, to me, you're indeed only at this level, idiot." After saying this, Noah's other hand suddenly clenched into a fist. Clang! Streaks of electrical lines crawled up Noah's tightly clenched fist. Wang! A resplendent vortex of air vibrated from Noah's tightly clenched fist. In the instant that Jeluo was completely unable to react, a fist that was even more terrifying than the most powerful punch of his life cut through the air and landed directly on Jeluo's body. Bang! Amidst the sound of an explosion, Jeluo's entire body exploded like an overinflated balloon under that terrifying punch, causing large amounts of blood, flesh, bones, and internal organs to splatter in all directions. Just one blow. Jeluo, whose strength was comparable to the kingdom's strongest warrior, Gojefu, died without a complete corpse. This was the power of Noah's punch that had reached LV4, and his all-around strength was at the stage of SSS. After being strengthened by enhanced magic, he used Annihilation Strike to display the power of Noah's punch. Ah! A blood-curdling scream rang out. That wasn't the voice of Jeluo, whose body was smashed to pieces. Instead, it was the voice of the guy who had luckily escaped Annabelle's purge and was still hiding, only to see that behind the rockery in the courtyard, Stoffin was paralyzed on the ground, screaming miserably with a face full of horror. Recalling Stoffin's despicable behavior and the obscene look he had when he looked at her, Annabelle spoke in a low voice. "Lord Noah, how should we deal with that scarab?" Noah glanced at Staven, who was screaming in pain, and turned around. As you like. Annabelle suddenly smiled. That was an extremely cruel smile like that of a demon. Chapter 12:14. 3 days later, the biggest underground criminal organization in the kingdom, the headquarters of the 8 departments of the organization known as the Hachibana, were all defeated. There was no suspense at all. As the strongest fighters of the Hachibana, the biggest underground criminal organization, those 6 armed members who were comparable to fine steel-level adventurers had all lost their lives in the hands of Noah and Annabelle. A large number of strong fighters in the Hachibana's security department were also all wiped out by Annabelle's magic on that day. After losing these forces, no matter how deep the Hachibana infiltrated the kingdom, under the situation where even the intelligence of their headquarters had been exposed, it was naturally impossible for them to resist the attacks of the fine steel-level adventurers of the Wild Rose Gang. Therefore, almost on the second day after the intelligence was deciphered, Agagase, Ibirui, Gragland, Hina, T, and even Gudjefu's group split into 6 groups, and with the strongest vanguard, they quickly destroyed 6 of the Hachibana's departments. As for the remaining 2 departments, one was sent by Noah and Annabelle to destroy, while the other was the courtyard where Jieluo and the other members of the security department were at that day. Since Noah had already taken care of it, there was no need to destroy it. Therefore, in just 3 days, the headquarters of the 8 departments of the Hachibana were all defeated. And just like Agagase's plan from the start, after the 8 headquarters of the Hachibana were all defeated, the panicking managers of the departments could only helplessly seek help from the nobles who were in cahoots with them. In the end, Princess Lana, who had been keeping an eye on the nobles, successfully followed the vine and found the locations of the managers of the other 7 departments other than Jieluo. Then, the people of the Wild Rose Gang acted and took down all of them. At this point, the Hachibana, the biggest underground criminal organization in the kingdom, was almost completely wiped out. The reason why the word almost was used to describe it was because, other than the headquarters of the 8 departments, the Hachibana definitely had some small strongholds set up in the territories of the other nobles, just like the village where they cultivated the raw materials for the drugs. Those small strongholds had not been wiped out yet. Therefore, even if the managers and headquarters of the 8 departments of the Yakuza were all defeated, the leaders of the remaining small strongholds would still take advantage of their territories, and with the help of the nobles who were in cahoots with them, they could barely maintain their existence. Even so, the power of the Hachibana had been greatly weakened, and its influence on the kingdom had also been greatly reduced. If Princess Lana was smart enough, it shouldn't be difficult to find an opportunity to eliminate these fish that escaped the net. However, that had nothing to do with Noah. According to the agreement, Noah's assistance would only last until the managers and headquarters of the 8 departments of the Yakuza were all captured. If this assistance was maintained until the entire Hachi Fingers was defeated, who knew how long it would take to find all the fish that had escaped the net? Because of this, Haggis and the others weren't so thick-skinned as to ask Noah to stay in the capital for the sake of some fish that slipped through the net. In other words, the matter of dealing with the Hachibana had come to an end. As for the gains, they were not small at all. According to the previous agreement, after the headquarters of the 8 departments of the Hachibana were defeated, the stolen goods that were collected would all belong to Noah. After checking, Noah realized that these gains were more than 10 times more than what he got from selling large amounts of stainless steel. After all, most of the business that the headquarters of the 8 departments of the Hachibana had done so far was here, so how could it not be a lot? After a few days of hard work, he was able to get this kind of gains, so Noah was quite satisfied. Not to mention the gains in terms of money, just the gains from the rest of the materials that he planned to use to make equipment, tools, and other items were already considered a huge amount of resources. With these, he would definitely be able to make quite a number of magical tools with miraculous effects in the underground tomb of Nasarek, which would be of great help. Originally, Noah only planned to earn some money on this trip to see if he could use it to pay for the maintenance of the underground tomb of Nasarek. Now, with so many unexpected gains, if he was still not satisfied, then he would be too greedy. Under such circumstances, Noah felt that it was time for him to leave the capital and return to the underground tomb of Nasarek. "You're leaving." In the hall of Go Jefu's mansion, with Go Jefu and Go Jefu as the leaders, A group of powerhouses of the highest level in the kingdom all revealed shocked expressions. "What's so strange about it?" Noah said helplessly. "I came to the capital to do business, and not to settle down. Now that I've achieved my goal, there's nothing strange about leaving here, right? But if you're leaving, Mr. Noah is planning to return to Yelantir, right?" Gu Jiefu frowned slightly. Compared to Yelantir, the capital should be more suitable for Mr. Noah to live in, right? Is this place more suitable for people to live in than Yelantir? Noah looked at Gu Jiefu. Perhaps, as the capital of the kingdom of Restige, this place is indeed more attractive than the cities at the border, but it's not necessarily suitable for people to live in, right? Hearing that, Gu Jiefu was speechless. It was impossible for Gu Jiefu not to understand the meaning behind Noah's words. Indeed, compared to the cities at the border, the capital might be more prosperous. But there were too many disputes here. Other things aside, all kinds of nobles were basically gathered in the capital. With the current internal strife in the kingdom, it was impossible for someone like Noah, who had extraordinary powers, not to get involved in these disputes. When the time came, if he were to be involved in the political whirlpool of the kingdom, then the trouble would be huge. Of course, this so-called trouble would depend on Noah's wishes. If Noah wanted to occupy a place in the kingdom, then with Noah's abilities, it would definitely not be difficult for him to make a name for himself here. Unfortunately, Noah did not have that intention at all. Therefore, the disputes in the kingdom were only trouble to Noah. But, isn't this too much of a pity? Gu Jiefu was sincerely anxious. With Sir Dole's strength, if you are willing to serve the king, then the kingdom's situation will definitely improve a lot. The king has always wanted to meet you, sir. Don't you want to consider it? That's right, Sir Noah. Clem was also present, and he was just as anxious as Gu Jiefu. Ever since Lady Lana heard about Sir Noah, she has always wanted to meet Sir Noah. Don't you want to consider it, Sir Noah? Gu Jiefu and Clem's anxiety was not without reason. After interacting with each other for the past few days, everyone present had realized that Noah was unfathomable. At the very least, everyone present knew that Noah had power that surpassed everyone else, but no one knew where the limits of this power were. Even a level 50 super expert like Ibirui could not see the tip of the iceberg of Noah's true strength. Everyone found it hard to imagine just how strong Noah was. If this power could be used by the kingdom, then it would be an unprecedented help. Perhaps the kingdom's internal and external troubles and the gradual corruption could be improved because of Noah's existence. Come to think of it, who wouldn't be anxious about Noah's departure as long as they truly cared about the kingdom? Not to mention Gu Jiefu and Clem, even Hagrid tried to persuade him. Sir Noah, please reconsider. All right, you guys don't need to say anymore. Noah shook his head. I have my own home and I need to return there. There are many people there that I need to take care of. I also need to take care of those troublesome fellows. I can't stay here. Noah's home made everyone speechless. At the same time, it also made Annabelle's expressionless face soften slightly, because the home that Noah mentioned was undoubtedly the tomb under Nasarick, wasn't it? This time, Hagrid and the others had no choice but to give up. Just like that, Noah's plan to leave the royal city was put on the agenda. Night quietly fell. In the courtyard, Noah raised his head and looked at the bright full moon in the sky. His expression was more or less peaceful. No matter which world it is, the moon will be full sometimes. This sentence was heard by someone who happened to pass by. You say that as if you have been to other worlds. Noah's eyes flashed slightly. Chapter 12:15. The voice behind him made Noah, who was looking at the bright moon in the sky, slowly turn around and look at the source of the voice. Over there, Ibirua was dressed in a black robe as usual. She wore a mask that completely covered her entire body like the Grim Reaper of the night. She hugged her arms and leaned against the wall. Her gaze seemed to be cast on Noah. She just stared at Noah and said as she spoke, "However, even if you really came from another world, I wouldn't be surprised at all." Hearing this, Noah nodded, turned around again, looked at the moon in the sky, and said, "Maybe, I'm really not from this world. That's hard to say. Obviously, Noah thought Ibiruai's words were an exaggeration. After all, for Ibiruai, Noah's power was indeed beyond the reach of a human. Then, under such circumstances, it wasn't strange for Ibiruai to say such a thing. In view of this, Noah followed Ibiruai's words and half-jokingly told the truth. Noah didn't know this. What Ibiruai said next was very important to Noah. Looking at Noah's back facing her, looking at the bright moon in the sky, his robe fluttering in the night wind, creating an exceptionally beautiful scene, Ibiruai hesitated. After a while, Ibiruai seemed to have made up her mind and finally asked such a question. Hey, you're not a god, are you? God? Noah turned his head and looked at Ibiruai with some confusion. What is that? You don't know? Could it be that you are not a god? Ibiruai asked thoughtfully. No, maybe even you don't know that you're a god. That's hard to say. Seeing that Ibiruai had fallen into a state of soliloquy, Noah felt a little puzzled. Can you not say things that others don't understand? Just as Noah was about to say those words, an unexpected impact hit Noah with Ibiruai's next sentence. Raising her youthful face that could be imagined even if she couldn't see it, Elbaru looked straight at Noah. After a moment of consideration, she said so. Are you a player? Hearing this, Noah's eyes suddenly narrowed. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Ibiruai. Just now, what did this vampire girl say? Players? It was indeed the players, wasn't it? Looking at Noah's sudden strong reaction, Ibiruai's hands tightened little by little. Her voice was filled with an unimaginable uneasiness and solemnity. I knew it. You really are a player. I knew it. It's impossible for an ordinary human to possess such powerful strength, unless you are a player from another world or a descendant who has inherited the bloodline of these players. A player from another world. Hearing Ibiruai's words, Noah's eyes couldn't help but flicker. If it wasn't for the unstable emotions that caused his mana to go berserk when he was young, Noah would have cultivated a calmer state of mind in critical moments. But now he couldn't help but be shaken, right? At this time, Noah only had one question in his mind. That is, does the so-called player that Ibiruai mentioned match the first thought that came to his mind when he first heard this word? So, Noah took a deep breath, calmed down, and looked straight at Ibiruai. What do you mean by player? Noah's words made Ibiruai frown. At this point, are you still going to hide it? There's something wrong with what you just said, Noah said calmly. First of all, I really don't know what you mean by player. Liar. Ibiruai directly refuted. Your performance just now clearly shows that you know about the existence of players. Indeed, I know of a type of existence known as the players. Noah looked at Ibiruai. But I don't know if the players I know are the same as the players you know. Eh? Ibiruai was a little surprised. Don't tell me you don't know about the existence of other players? Other players. Noah narrowed his eyes and shook his head. Impossible. If it's the type of player I know, then there shouldn't be any other similar existence in this world. Why did the tomb in Nasaric transmigrate from the game Yggdrasil to this world? Because of the connection between the two worlds, the data in Yggdrasil, which should have been in the other world, flowed into this world, and in the process completed the materialization. According to what Gaia and Alea said, before the tomb in Nasaric transmigrated to this world, there was indeed a player from Yggdrasil that came with it. However, that player should have been intercepted by Gaia and Alea. Then, there shouldn't be a player from Yggdrasil in this world. Although that was what he said, the more Noah thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. Come to think of it, they were clearly two completely different worlds. Why did this world have so many similarities with Yggdrasil? In Yggdrasil, there were so-called professions. In this world, there were also so-called professions. In Yggdrasil, there was magic. In this world, there were many spells similar to Yggdrasil. Even the magical items from Yggdrasil had appeared in this world. For example, the magic sealing crystal that Noah obtained from the sunlight scripture purgatory was a magic item from Yggdrasil. Why did these two completely different worlds have so many similarities? This was not a parallel world like Aslan or Edras, nor was it a world of different species like the world of humans and the world of elemental fairies. This was a world that was completely separated, two worlds that existed independently in the between the worlds. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be so many similarities between these two worlds, right? Could it be that, in this world, there really were other players from YGGDRSILL? Undoubtedly, Gaia and Alea said that there was only one player that could come to this world, and that player was also intercepted. What was going on? Looks like you really don't know about the existence of other players. Seeing Noah's distressed appearance, Ibirua said thoughtfully, "No wonder you didn't react when you heard about the legend of the 8 Desires King." Ibirua's words woke Noah up. 8 Desires King. It had once possessed a great amount of divine power and had briefly dominated this world. No one knew where it had come from. Could it be? Noah looked at Ibirua in shock. The 8 Desires King is a player? Ibirua didn't answer Noah's question. Instead, she pondered for a while and suddenly said, "Actually, he's not the only one like the 8 Desires King, who suddenly appeared in this world out of nowhere and possessed great divine power. Once, the existence known as the 13 Heroes, the demon god that they defeated also suddenly appeared in this world," Ibirua said in a low voice. "The 6 gods that the Celian theocracy believes in also suddenly appeared in this world." Noah's expression instantly became uncertain. Thinking about it this way, it was true that many famous existences in myths and legends had appeared in such an extremely abrupt manner. The 8 Desires King that once dominated this world. The demon god that the 13 heroes defeated. The 6 gods that the Celian theocracy believed in. These were all existences that suddenly appeared in this world. These existences that suddenly appeared in this world with great divine power are the players that I know. Ibirua looked at Noah. And the descendants of these players will be addressed differently because of their race. However, the people of the theocracy call the players who inherited the bloodline of the 6 gods gods. Noah's heart was more or less in a mess. Chapter 12:16. From the information obtained from the Sunshine Scripture, Noah learned about the existence of the 6 great gods. It was said that they suddenly appeared in this world hundreds of years ago and were worshipped by the people of the Celian theocracy. From various rumors, Noah also learned about the existence of the 8 Desires King and the demon god. Legend had it that the 8 Desires King was a great existence of unknown origin. He suddenly appeared in this world and used his unparalleled power to temporarily dominate the entire world. As for the demon god, he was also a kind of evil person who suddenly appeared in this world and brought great disaster to this world. He was defeated by the existence of the 13 heroes. Whether it was the 6 great gods, the 8 Desires King, or the demon god, they were all characters that only existed in human myths and legends. However, these characters that appeared in myths and legends all had one thing in common that could not be ignored. That is, they all appeared in this world very suddenly. Moreover, before they appeared, there were no signs of them. Originally, Noah only treated these as myths and legends. However, if it was really like what Ibirua said, whether it was the 6 great gods, the 8 Desires King, or the demon god, they were all players, then this matter made sense. The reason why they suddenly appeared was because they did not belong to this world. The reason why they had such great divine power was because their level was higher than the highest level in this world, which was only level 35 in the hero domain. The reason why there were many professions and magic that were similar to those in Yggdrasil was because these players brought the professions and magic from Yggdrasil to this world and taught them to the people of this world. The reason why the Sunshine Scripture had the items from Yggdrasil was because the 6 great gods who left these items behind were players from YGGDRASILL. All these signs pointed to the fact that players from Yggdrasil had appeared more than once in this world where players from Yggdrasil should not exist. Phew! Noah exhaled deeply, calming down his somewhat chaotic emotions. He immediately raised his eyes, looked at Ibirua, and solemnly said, "Thank you for telling me such important information. This is not worthy of your special thanks." Ibirua was startled at first. She did not expect Noah to suddenly thank her so solemnly. She tilted her head in confusion and asked, "Then you are a player, right?" "You can say so." Noah smiled bitterly. "At least, I am not from this world." As expected, Ibirua looked at Noah in a completely different way. "Looking at you, you seem to have just arrived in this world not long ago. You are not very familiar with this world, right? Once you are familiar with this world, what do you plan to do with it?" But Ibirua did not say this last sentence. However, this was what Ibirua was the most. There was no other way. The descent of the 6 great gods into this world led to the emergence of the Si Lien cult nation, a nation that rejected all races other than humans and advocated the supremacy of humans. The 8 Desires King had King of 8 Desires King came to this world, the demon god of kings of gods, and brought unimaginable disasters gods. Every time a player came, they would have a great impact on this world. Then, as a player, what does Noah plan to do with this world after coming to this world? Is he going to become a religion like the 6 great gods and build a human country? Is he going to sweep away thousands of armies and rule the world like the 8 Desires King? Or is he going to bring unimaginable disasters to the world like the demon god of gods? Ibirua realized that this seemingly ordinary human in front of her could change this world greatly with just a thought. Is this change good or bad? If she did not confirm it, who would be at ease? As if seeing through the uneasiness and solemnity in Ibirua's heart, Noah sighed and turned around. "You don't have to worry. As long as the people of this world do not provoke me, then I will not do anything to the people of this world." This answer made Ibirua's uneasiness even more intense. So, Ibirua could not help but say, "Then what if someone provokes you?" Noah glanced at Ibirua and said indifferently, "If there's a grudge, then there's a grudge. If there's a grudge, then there's a grudge, right?" This sentence sent a chill down Ibirua's spine. The meaning of Noah's words could not be clearer. As long as they don't provoke him, then he will not come looking for trouble. However, as long as they provoked him, he would not show them any mercy. Ibirua felt that she really needed to tell Haggis and Gudjefu not to provoke Noah for the sake of the kingdom's interests. Otherwise, this corrupt country with internal and external troubles will really be finished. So, Ibirua took a deep breath and asked tentatively, "Apart from you, this time, are there any other players who came to this world with you?" "No," Noah said bluntly. "Apart from me, there are only a few of my subordinates who came with me. They are not players, but something similar to summon monsters. As long as I don't allow it, they will not casually participate in the disputes of this world." "Is that so?" Eleanor sighed in relief and nodded. "I understand. I hope one day you will not become an enemy of humanity." "Enemy of humanity?" Noah looked at Ibirua with a half-smile. "As an undying, you're quite fond of humans." "Is that so?" Ibirua said, not to be outdone. "As a human, don't you get along well with the other races?" Noah shrugged and didn't say anything else. Seeing this, Ibirua also tactfully shut her mouth. She took a deep look at Noah's back before quietly retreating. Only Noah was left. He continued to look at the bright moon in the sky, but his mood was no longer as relaxed as before. Instead, it was full of thoughts. Looks like it is necessary to talk to Gaia and Alea about this matter. Why were there so many Yggdrasil players in this world that had once descended into this world? Noah really couldn't answer this question alone. Only Gaia and Alea could give an affirmative answer based on this matter. Just when Noah was lost in thought, an aura suddenly approached Noah at an extremely fast speed. Noah, who was awakened from his thoughts, turned his head in surprise and looked at the entrance of the courtyard. There, like a ninja, Annabelle suddenly descended from the sky and knelt on one knee on the ground, looking at Noah. At this moment, Annabelle's beautiful face was filled with unprecedented worry. Then, Annabelle spoke hesitantly with such worry in her voice. "Sir Noah, Sir Yair has just sent a message." "Yair?" Noah clearly noticed the worry on Annabelle's pretty face, and an ominous premonition rose in his heart. What did Yair say? Annabelle parted her red lips and opened her mouth slightly, but it seemed that there was something that she couldn't say out loud. She also seemed to be worried that Noah would be angry if she said it out loud. She couldn't say anything for a while. That performance made the ominous premonition in Noah's heart even stronger. What's wrong? Noah looked at Annabelle closely. Is it something you can't tell me? Annabelle bit her lips, and after a long while, she finally spoke with some difficulty. Sir Zatia rebelled. Noah's face suddenly sank. Nasaric Underground Tomb, Basement 10. Noah, who used the ability of Anne's ring of respect to teleport back to the Nasaric Underground Tomb, opened the door of the room in front of the throne room that couldn't be directly teleported to, and walked out. Outside the door, led by Yair Bade, Yon, Mare, Cossitz, Demiugos, and other guardians were all present. Even Sebastian and the rest of the combat maids were here. Sir Noah, a group of NPCs in the Nasaric Underground Tomb all knelt on one knee and bowed their noblest heads to Noah. Chapter 12:17. There was an unbearable, stifling atmosphere in the air. Looking at the NPCs kneeling on one knee in front of him with their heads lowered, not even daring to breathe loudly, Noah could clearly feel the deep uneasiness hidden in their hearts. That uneasiness was mainly directed at Noah. Moreover, rather than uneasiness, it was more like fear. Of course, what the NPCs of the underground tomb were afraid of was not Noah, but whether or not Noah would be disappointed in them. After spending some time together, Noah had a deep understanding of the loyalty of these NPCs. To these NPCs, Noah, the supreme ruler of the great underground tomb of Nasaric, was everything. The strong loyalty that no one could compare to made these NPCs care about Noah to the extreme. If Noah doubted or was disappointed in the NPCs of the underground tomb because of Satya's rebellion, it would definitely be worse than death for these NPCs. It was precisely because he knew this that Noah felt that it was really inconceivable. As a guardian of the highest level of loyalty to Noah, how could Satya rebel? With such feelings, Noah looked at the NPCs of the underground tomb, who did not even dare to breathe loudly, and sighed. All right, you don't have to be so worried. Satya is Satya and you are you. I won't blame all of you for one person's mistakes. After saying that, Noah turned around and walked in the direction of the throne room. You all come together. Yes, your majesty. Everyone obediently agreed, stood up, and followed Noah in the direction of the throne room. Because Noah used the ability of Anne's ring of respect to teleport directly to the room in front of the throne room, the distance between the throne room and the throne room was not very far. When Noah arrived in front of the throne room, the two combat maids went past Noah and opened the door for Noah to pass through. Noah led a group of NPCs from Nasaric's underground tomb into the throne room. A group of NPCs from Nasaric's underground catacombs stopped in front of the throne room. Noah, on the other hand, walked up the steps alone, came to the throne, and sat down directly. Noah didn't even look at the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasaric as he issued an order. Main control source activate. As soon as he finished speaking, a translucent window that looked a bit like a control panel suddenly flashed in front of Noah. This scene was like a character opening a personal interface in a game. It gave people a feeling that this was not reality. Noah cast his gaze at the window that suddenly flashed in front of him. It was a window that was divided into several pages by labels. Each page was densely filled with text. This window was the management system of the underground tomb of Nasaric. It recorded the daily management fees of the underground tomb of Nasaric, as well as the types and numbers of monsters that existed on each floor of the tomb, as well as the various magical traps that were being activated. In Yggdrasil, this window could be opened at any time and place. However, after coming to this world, this main window that represented the operation and management of the underground tomb of Nasaric could only be opened and operated in the throne room, which was equivalent to the heart of the tomb. Usually, when Noah confirmed the operation of the underground tomb of Nasaric, he would first make a general confirmation here, then listen to the detailed reports of the situation on each floor of Yair Bade's integration. Therefore, Noah was quite familiar with how to operate this main window. With practiced movements, Noah's fingers swiped back and forth on the main window a few times and opened the NPC display page. It recorded the names of all the NPCs in the underground tomb of Nasaric. Because the order was determined by level, Noah easily saw the name of the level 100 NPC, Satya. Her name was now in a dazzling reddish-black color. Apart from Satya, the names of the other NPCs were displayed in white text. Looking at Satya's dazzling reddish-black name, Noah frowned and looked at Yair Bade. This is the reason why you confirmed that Satya betrayed us? When Noah was not in the underground tomb of Nasarek, Yair Bade was in charge of adjusting and confirming the main window here, as well as the operation and management of the underground tomb of Nasarek. Presumably, Yair Bade had discovered that Satya's name was abnormal, so he came to this conclusion, right? Not only that, Yair Bade's pretty face tensed up as if to strengthen his persuasion. After discovering Satya's abnormality, we also tried to contact her. But no matter who it was, we couldn't successfully contact her. In addition, Demiugos said in a deep voice, the servants that Satya took with her when she left the underground tomb of Nasarek have all been confirmed dead. Every floor of the great underground tomb in Nasarek had its own magical creature. Some of these monsters were ordinary monsters with automatic rebirth, while others were high-level monsters with non-automatic rebirth that required money to be summoned. Among the high-level monsters with non-automatic rebirth, almost every guardian would choose a servant that directly obeyed their orders. Satya naturally had one as well. The servants are dead, and Satya's whereabouts are unknown, right? Noah's fingers tapped rhythmically on the armrest of the throne. After a while, he pointed at Satya's name on the main window and asked, "What does this red and black name mean?" In the underground tomb of Nasarek, if an NPC died, their name would disappear from the main window. However, Satya's name did not disappear. It only changed color. Could it be that this was the color of betrayal? Yair Bade and the others looked at each other, then stepped forward and answered, "Lord Noah, the meaning behind this change in text might be that Satya has been mentally controlled, turning her into an existence that will be hostile to the tomb in Nasarek," Noah said with a frown. Mentally controlled? Noah was startled. That can't be. Satya was a vampire, classified as an undead existence. For an undead, no matter whether it was positive or negative, any mental effects would be nullified. Why would someone like Satya be mentally controlled? I don't know the reason yet, but it is a fact that Satya has become an enemy, Yair Bade said with an unprecedentedly serious expression and a firm tone. No matter the reason, Satya, who betrayed Lord Noah, cannot be forgiven. Lord Noah, please allow me to recommend myself and form a subjugation team. Cossets and I, who are invincible in terms of attack and defense, will suppress Satya. No, Demiugos said with a trembling voice, considering that among the guardians, Satya is the strongest one in a duel. If we want to have absolute confidence in defeating her, it's best to let Yauda, who is good at team battles, and Marley, who is the strongest wizard, fight together. That will be better. The other guardians nodded one after another, their expressions resolute. For these guardians, betraying the supreme ruler of the underground tomb of Nasarek was unforgivable, no matter the reason. Even if it was against their will. Even if it was their companions. However, Noah's determination caused him to sweep his gaze across everyone present. And then, what will happen after we subjugate Satya? Hearing this, the group of guardians was about to say something, but they were interrupted by Noah. Calm down and think about it. Satya is an undead. Logically speaking, it's impossible for her to be mentally controlled. But in the end, Satya's mind was still controlled. This way, if you go all out and attack Satya without understanding anything, can you guarantee that you won't be mentally controlled and become a traitor? The guardians held their breaths. Chapter 12:18. When it came to loyalty to the highest ruler of the Nasarek underground tomb, as long as one was a member of the Nasarek underground tomb, there was no one who couldn't hold their heads high and confidently tell everyone that they would never betray him. It was also because of this strong loyalty that everyone present was so angry at Satya's betrayal. Everyone, including Yair Abed and Demiugos, felt that Satya's betrayal was trampling on this loyalty, right? For the NPCs of the Nasarek underground tomb who had the same loyalty, Wasn't this unforgivable? In addition, even if she had no choice, Satya had indeed betrayed the supreme ruler of the Nasaric underground tomb. No matter what the reason was, it would not be able to convince the NPCs of the Nasaric underground tomb to understand. However, if the same thing were to happen to him, what would happen? Yair Abed and the others shuddered just thinking about it. If they were under mind control, even if they were unwilling, what could they do? In the end, they would still betray Noah, wouldn't they? The NPCs of the Nasaric underground tomb were not afraid of death. Compared to being mentally controlled and betraying Noah, these NPCs would rather die. The scary thing was that they couldn't even choose to die. That would be a fate worse than death. Do you understand now? Noah sighed. Even Satya, who shouldn't be mentally controlled, was mentally controlled. How can you guarantee that you won't encounter the same thing? Calm down. Only then did the NPCs in Nazaric's underground tomb calm down and calm down. Sorry, Lord Noah, Yair Abed said with some shame. We were reckless. That's not important. Noah shook his head. What's important is that we have to figure out why Satya was mentally controlled. Otherwise, your situation will become very dangerous. The NPCs of the Nasaric underground tomb nodded heavily. In Yggdrasil, mental control also existed. A mind-dominated character is, as the name suggests, a subject of servitude to the person using the mind domination until the mind domination is removed or the character dies. As an undying, be it positive or negative mental influence, it should not have any effect on Satya. However, there were exceptions to everything. Take Noah, for example. His curse resistance could also repel all mysteries, whether beneficial or not, unless the mysteries could affect even the gods. However, through Noah's own use of mysteries, such as magic, even if it did not affect God, it could still affect him. Noah wasn't the only one. Luo Hao, who was also a god-slayer, was able to use Eastern divination. Yarek, known as the Black Prince, could also use magic. Many of the godslayers could even borrow the power of magic props that were activated by their own curse power to obtain mysterious help. Moreover, even if the external mysteries would be repelled by the Godslayer's curse resistance, if the mysteries were directly poured into the Godslayer's body, it would still be effective. For example, Alice, Erica, and Liliana had once used the professor's magic on Noah in a mouth-to-mouth manner. That was the best example. Thinking about it this way, the undying would not be mentally controlled. That might be a relative term. Then, the first thing to consider was under what circumstances could mind domination be effective on the undying Satya, who was at level 100. If they didn't figure this out, the NPCs in Nazaric's underground tomb would all be mentally controlled and betray them. If that happened, they wouldn't even have a place to cry. Yair Bade, Noah said to Yair Bade. Nothing abnormal happened to Satya before she left Nazaric's tomb, right? No. Yair Bade shook his head. At that time, Satya was behaving normally. She didn't show any abnormalities. Then, Satya left the Nasaric underground tomb to carry out the mission I gave her to capture the people of the Scythian theocracy, right? Noah asked again. What happened to that mission? It was not completed, Yair Bade answered honestly. Satya suffered from mind control while carrying out her mission. Oh, Noah narrowed his eyes. In other words, the person who used mind domination on Satya is very likely a puppet of the Scythian theocracy. Is that so? Yair Bade frowned and hesitated for a moment before saying. Although it is a little rude to say this, Lord Noah, the strength of the humans in this world seems to be pitifully weak. It is hard to imagine that such a human could successfully use mind domination on an undying Satya, who is at level 100. Is that so? Noah suddenly laughed coldly. What if the god that the people of the Scythian theocracy believe in is also a player? What? Yair Bade was stunned. Not to mention Yair Bade, even the rest of the NPCs were stunned on the spot. In such a situation, Noah closed his eyes. After a while, he suddenly opened his eyes and asked. He then asked, in Yggdrasil, if one wants to successfully use mind domination on an undying, what kind of item can do it? This? Yair Bade's beautiful face changed a few times, and he whispered, If one wants to successfully use mind domination on an undying that shouldn't be affected by mind domination, the level of the item has to be at least legendary. But Satya is not an ordinary undying, Demiurgos said. Satya is the true ancestor of the vampires, and the composition of her profession is quite strict. It specializes in strengthening her in combat. Among those professions, there are many special skills that can resist mind magic. In addition, Satya also carries an item to reduce the effects of abnormal statuses. In theory, it is impossible for her to be mind-dominated. At this point, Demiurgos seemed to have thought of something and muttered, Unless, Noah looked at Demiurgos. Unless it is a world-class item, right? Everyone suddenly fell silent. A world-class item. There were only 200 of them in the entire Yggdrasil. Could break the game's balance and could be said to be the ultimate item that broke the game's rules. The power of an item of this level could even be compared to an X-grade relic. If it was such an ultimate item in Yggdrasil that could even break the balance of the game, it was not impossible for Satya to be mentally controlled. But that's impossible, Demiurgos said in disbelief. In this world, other than the Supreme Being, is there anyone else who can have a world-class item? What's impossible about that? Noah was speechless. If the 6 great gods of the Celian cult nation were really players, then maybe they really could have left a world-class item for the people of that country. After all, the 6 great gods were also players of Yggdrasil, right? Although not everyone could have a world-class item, and there were only 200 of them in the entire Yggdrasil, it was not surprising that a player who was known as the 6 great gods would bring one into this world. Noah just did not expect that the people sent by the Celian cult nation to the vicinity of Khan village would be able to bring the most precious world-class item for a group of missing believers. If he could have gotten the information that the 6 great gods of the Celian cult nation were players in advance, Noah would not have rashly sent the NPCs in the underground tomb of Nasarek to capture them. Thinking of this, Noah took a deep breath and looked at Yair-Bade. What about Satya's current location? It has been confirmed, Yair-Bade replied immediately. She's near Khan village and hasn't left. Noah nodded, stood up, and walked down from the throne. Then I'll go and see Satya. After that, Noah did not give the NPCs any time to react and walked out of the door. The group of NPCs was shocked as they hurriedly followed after him. Chapter 12:19. Not far from Khan village, there was an extremely vast open space. This was the place where Noah and Yair-Bade had captured all of the scripture of sunlight from the Celian theocracy. At this moment, this extremely vast open space appeared to be in a rather sorry state. To be specific, in the center of the vast open space, there was a small area that seemed to have been burnt and had turned pitch black. And in this small charred area stood a figure. It was a rather petite figure of a young girl with a beautiful face. She was wearing a red and black princess-like dress, and her silver-gray hair was tied into a ponytail that shone with a gorgeous luster under the sunlight. The beautiful petite girl was like a noble little princess, and the scene of her standing under the sunlight was extremely beautiful. Unfortunately, that small area that was completely charred black had completely destroyed the entire beautiful atmosphere. Moreover, if one looked closely, they would discover that the girl who looked like a noble little princess was like a puppet that was hung by an invisible string. Her hands were hanging down, and her body was hanging down without any strength. Her pair of scarlet eyes had no focus at all, and she looked quite strange. At a certain moment, in front of this open space, a burst of darkness suddenly surged out and gathered in the space, forming a semi-oval shape. It was the shape of a door. A few figures walked out of the door that was made up of pitch-black darkness and appeared on the empty ground out of thin air. They were the NPCs from the great underground tomb of Nasarek led by Noah. As soon as they appeared, Yair-Bade immediately spoke. Be on guard. The NPCs from the great underground tomb of Nasarek who walked out of the teleportation magic called Portal seemed to have been ready for a long time. Almost at the instant when Yair-Bade's voice sounded, they began to move without hesitation. Whoosh! With Annabelle as the leader, A total of 6 combat maids from the Pleiades star cluster spread out like phantoms. They scuttled to the surroundings with weapons in their hands, facing outside, and faces full of vigilance. Noah, Marley, Cositas, Demiugos, Sebastian, and the other level 100 NPCs formed an encirclement with their backs facing Noah, protecting him inside. Finally, a black light flashed on Yair Bedid's body, and a pitch-black demon-shaped armor covered her entire delicate body. A giant axe also appeared in her hand, protecting Noah. The 3 lines of defense protected Noah layer by layer, and it could be said that they were on guard to the extreme. Obviously, the NPCs from the great underground tomb of Nassarik were worried that there was a powerful enemy who could control Satya and harm Noah. Only Noah, who was heavily protected, raised his eyes. Satya, the guardian with the strongest solo ability in the great underground tomb of Nassarik, was hanging there like a marionette. This made Noah's mood extremely bad. It was as if Satya had lost her life and turned into a pure corpse. She did not react to any changes in her surroundings, and her scarlet eyes were empty and lifeless. She did not have any consciousness at all. Her behavior was telling everyone present that Satya had been controlled by Satya. Satya had indeed been controlled by her mind. However, Noah did not understand. Since those guys from the Siren Theocracy had used a world-class item to control Satya's mind, then why was Satya like this? After all, Satya was a level 100 super expert. Moreover, her professions were all focused on combat. In terms of combat power, she was stronger than many level 100 characters. In this world, an existence at Satya's level was like a natural disaster that could act on its own. Even if the 6 great gods of the Siren Theocracy were players, they would at most be level 100. Even if they were stronger than Satya, they would not be much stronger. Considering Satya's combat strength, since they had her under control, it was unlikely that they would leave such a super fighter behind. In the game, characters who have been controlled by their minds will act according to the orders of the existence that controls them. Noah frowned, but Satya was directly thrown here as if she didn't receive any orders. Something must have happened before the other party gave the order, right? Yair Bedid raised his conjecture to Noah while guarding his surroundings. Looking at the surrounding situation, Satya seems to have had a conflict with the enemy before she was controlled and fought. Considering that the other party has a world-class item, the strength of the humans in this world shouldn't surpass Satya's. It's very likely that before Satya's mind was completely controlled, Satya's last desperate counterattack might have defeated the ruler. That's possible. If Satya's final counterattack had killed her opponent before the Overlord gave the order, it would make sense that Satya had stayed here alone without receiving any orders. Noah turned his gaze to the ground around where Satya was standing. The area was charred black, proving that Satya had fought with the enemy before she became like this. However, there were no corpses around. It was obvious that Satya had more than one enemy. Even after killing the ruler, the other party's companions still retrieved the corpse and evacuated. They probably had no choice but to leave Satya here, right? In Satya's situation, if he ignored her, she would continue to stay like this. However, if he got too close or if he attacked Satya, it was very likely that Satya would attack him, unless he removed Satya's mental control state. At that moment, Noah took out a small silver sword from his waist. Closing his eyes, Noah held the silver dagger tightly and spoke softly. Aster, can you remove the mental control from Satya's body? As the highest level elven device and one of the strongest, even the 5 elven monarchs had to be wary of its power. Aster had a curse resistance ability that was even more illegal than the Godslayer. Therefore, if it was the Demon Slayer, there might be a way to remove the control of the world-class item on Satya. Aster's voice sounded in Noah's mind. No problem. A master's sword. As long as I have sufficient divine power, unless it's at the level of the gods that Master has killed, I have the ability to remove all mysteries. Aster's voice eased Noah's expression. But the next moment, Aster's tone changed. But if I want to remove the mental control of that vampire, I have to stab my elven device into her body. This time, Noah's brows furrowed. But if I get close to her, She'll attack, right? Yes. Aster's voice sounded in Noah's mind. So, Master, please be prepared to fight that vampire. Noah fell silent. Fight against Zaisha? Lord Noah. Yerbade seemed to have seen through Noah's thoughts and suddenly said, if you want to suppress Satya, please allow us to accept this mission. That's right. Demiurgos also said. Although we know that the Supreme Sovereign is worried that we will be under mental control like Satya, if we fight Satya, the Supreme Sovereign might also be under mental control. That's something that can't happen. Lord Noah, Yal, Mayor, Cossitz, Sebastian, and the others all said in unison. Please give this mission to us. Noah did not speak. He opened his eyes and looked at the marionette like Satya in front of him. After a while he turned around. Send people to keep an eye on the surroundings. Don't let anyone come close. If you find anyone from the Si Lien cult nation, take them down immediately. After confirming that no one is secretly watching, we'll deal with Satya's matter. Hearing this, the NPCs could only nod. Chapter 12:20. Nasaric Underground Tomb, Underground 9th floor. In the bedroom, Noah laid on the bed as soon as he came back. He stared at the ceiling as his dark eyes fluctuated with intense emotions. Frankly speaking, Noah was rarely like this. Therefore, if someone who understood Noah saw this scene, they would definitely be shocked, right? In fact, Noah's current mood was indeed quite anxious. That's right. He was anxious because of Shesha's matter. Wang! A dazzling white light rose from Noah's body and set off a burst of light particles. They moved back and forth in the air and converged into a human figure. Within the light, Aster's petite figure slowly appeared. Her beautiful silver-white hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall. Her fair skin looked like pure white ivory under the dazzling white light. Aster slowly opened his eyes amidst the radiance. His mysterious gaze fell on Noah. Looking at those beautiful eyes, Noah even had a feeling that he would be sucked in at any moment. Under such circumstances, the light gradually dissipated. Aster rode on Noah's body and placed her hands on Noah's chest. Her delicate body leaned forward and looked down at Noah, who was lying in front of her. Her tender face didn't have any emotions. From Noah's perspective, Aster was so beautiful that it was tragic. No matter who it was, even if they were women like Aster, they would be moved when they saw such a beautiful Aster. However, Noah wasn't in the mood for that. Aster. Noah looked up at Aster and bitterly smiled. You're not wearing clothes again. Yes. Aster, who appeared from the light, didn't wear any clothes as usual. Her tender but extremely beautiful body was exposed in front of Noah's eyes. Of course, that pair of ivory smooth thighs was still wearing something called knee socks. The sword fairy, who was wearing knee-high socks, maintained her posture of riding on Noah's body. She looked down at Noah from above and her mysterious eyes swayed slightly as she spoke. I think that this attire should be able to make Master happy. Happy? Noah felt a little powerless. It's not the first time I've seen it. Is that so? Aster's tender face moved closer to Noah, to the point where it wouldn't be strange if they kissed. Her flickering eyes were a little moist. In other words, Master is tired of looking at my body? Can you not use such misleading words? Noah felt that his body was becoming weaker, so he simply said so. Aster, who asked you to appear in this attire so often? Why don't you take off your knee socks? Take off my knee socks. Aster's expressionless face turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye. Master is really a pervert. It was still the same unfathomable sense of shame as before. However, because of this weakness, Noah was able to use the same trick to deal with Aster when she appeared in this attire in the past. Therefore, Noah continued to use the same trick that had worked so well in the past. If you don't want to take off your knee socks, then you have to obediently put on your clothes. As long as Noah said this, then this elf girl who had an unusual sense of shame about exposing her thighs would obediently put on her clothes, allowing Noah to avoid a lot of stimulation. Unfortunately, this time Noah was destined to be surprised. Aster's adorable face turned redder and redder, but she didn't put on her clothes due to shyness as Noah expected. Instead, she revealed a determined expression. I understand. Saying this, Aster's trembling hands removed her knee socks under Noah's astonished gaze. In the next moment, a pair of white and smooth thighs were exposed in front of Noah. Until this moment, Aster was completely naked. Aster? Noah was really surprised. The sword elf named Aster's sense of shame was different from ordinary girls. Ordinary girls wouldn't be able to calmly show their naked body in front of the opposite sex. But Aster could do it without batting an eyelid. Ordinary girls would think that showing their thighs would increase their charm. But Aster was abnormally shy about this matter. For Aster, the act of showing her thighs was no different from a young girl showing her naked body in front of the opposite sex. In the past, Aster had never done this before. She only did it once in a fit of pique when she was jealous of Wendy. But this time, in front of Noah, Aster showed her thighs that had always been tightly protected. This was enough to make Noah feel bewildered. Aster, who had removed her knee socks, was still riding on Noah's body. Her white and smooth thighs couldn't help but tremble slightly. Her petite and slender body was curled up into a ball, and her face was flushed red. This way, Master will be happy, right? Obviously, Aster was really shy. Aster. Noah could only stare blankly at Aster. Why? If it was in the past, even if the other party was Noah, Aster would never do this. What was going on? Perhaps because she heard the confusion in Noah's voice, Aster looked straight at Noah. Although her face was flushed due to shyness, Aster still said this sentence. Because Master's mood seems to be very bad, so Aster wants to make Master happy. This sentence made Noah instantly speechless. Master! Aster once again moved her face closer to Noah, as if she wanted to see something from Noah's eyes. She stared straight into Noah's eyes. Are you blaming yourself? This time, Noah was silent. Seeing Noah like this, Aster's eyes flickered as she spoke out Noah's thoughts. Does Master feel that it's entirely his fault that vampire called Satya's mind was controlled? It had to be said that Aster guessed correctly. This was the reason why Noah's mood was so unusually anxious. This was because Noah was the one who ordered the NPCs in the Great Graveyard of Nasarek to capture the Celian cult's people. This order caused Satya to be mentally controlled by the Celian theocracy, turning her into a marionette. If Noah hadn't underestimated the Celian theocracy and thought that he could easily take them down with the power of the NPCs in Nazarek's underground tomb, Satya wouldn't have ended up in such a state. As a result, Noah's order caused Zaisha to become a traitor in the eyes of the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasarek. She was an unforgivable target and could not help but become a puppet, falling to such a state. For Satya, this was a very painful thing. After all, the more loyal one was, the more painful it would be to be considered a traitor, right? Noah was even a little afraid. When Satya recovered and found out that she was once a traitor, how painful would it be? Not to mention, in order to let Satya recover, Noah had to fight with the innocent Satya because of his wrong order. Otherwise, he could only allow the NPCs in the great tomb of Nasarek to surround and kill Shadia. How could Noah be in a good mood? Master didn't do anything wrong, Aster said as he looked at Noah. Master didn't know that the 6 great gods of the Celian theocracy were players. Nor did he know that the Celian theocracy had a world-class item. There's no reason to say that it was Master's fault when he gave such an order. You don't have to comfort me, Aster. Noah stretched out his hand and stroked Aster's head with a bitter expression. No matter what, Satya became like that because of my order. It's not too much to say that I caused Satya to be hated by the rest of the people in the tomb. Of course, I also know that now isn't the time to feel guilty. Noah smiled. So, give me a little more time, okay? I understand. Aster pondered for a moment, then said, Then, let me make Master feel better. Chapter 12:21. Make me feel better? Aster's words made Noah more or less stunned. But before Noah could react, Aster, who was riding on Noah, suddenly lowered his body, closed his eyes, and lightly kissed Noah's lips. Chirp! With a soft sound, Aster's delicate lips parted. However, the touch of those soft lips lingered in Noah's heart for a long time. How is it? Aster continued to stare at Noah's eyes, his eyes filled with mystery. Can this make Master feel better? Hearing this, Noah snapped out of his daze and laughed bitterly. Where did you learn this trick? In the guild, Aster said. When Mira and Lisanna treat Master like this, Master's mood will become better. Is that so? Noah suddenly felt a little awkward. How come I don't know? But Aster knows. Aster looked at Noah expressionlessly. And Aster knows that Master's mood is the best when you mate with Mira and Lisanna. Don't say things like that. Noah was shaken. I say, Aster, don't tell me you've been watching from the side all this time? Watching? Aster tilted his head. Are you referring to the process of Master mating with Mira and Lisanna? I told you, don't talk about mating. Noah's voice was a little louder than usual. Tell me the truth, Aster. Have you been watching from the side all this time? That's not right, Master. Aster shook his head and looked at Noah. Aster didn't peek, he looked at it openly. The corners of Noah's mouth twitched slightly. If that was the case, then it wasn't wrong. After all, Aster had always been in the form of a dagger and was carried around by Noah. Even when Noah was having fun with Mira and Lisanna, Aster, who had transformed into a small sword, was left to the side. In other words, if Noah really did it under the eyes of this sword spirit girl, it would definitely lead the child astray. And it wasn't just once. Mira and Lisanna definitely can't know about this. If Mira and Lisanna were to find out about it, those two delicate fiancés would probably never allow Noah to hug them again before they got married, right? While Noah was feeling a little ashamed, Aster continued with his shocking words. If it can make Master's mood better, then Aster will mate with Master too. Noah almost spat out a mouthful of blood. His expression was one of wonder. It was unknown how Aster understood Noah's expression, but the young sword spirit girl leaned over and kissed Noah's lips once more. Then, like a bird pecking at its food, she repeatedly kissed Noah's lips. In short, although Aster's appearance was young and her figure was immature, it didn't mean that she wasn't charming. Just like in many legends, as an elf, Aster had a stunning appearance that ordinary humans couldn't have. It was enough to make any man, both physically and mentally healthy, howl. Under such circumstances, Aster was still kissing Noah as if she was throwing herself into his arms. She looked like she didn't care even if she was pushed down. It had to be said that even Noah almost lost his mind. Noah, who was afraid of himself, hurriedly pushed away Aster's astonishingly slender shoulder while he was still rational. Then, he opened his mouth without giving Aster a chance to explain. All right, Aster, if this continues, it won't be good. So, let's just leave it like this, okay? Hearing this, Aster's expression did not change at all, but a hint of dissatisfaction appeared in his mysterious eyes. Then, Aster stared at Noah and said, You're the one who's going to die. Undoubtedly, Master will be very happy if Mira and Lisanna treat Master like this. Can't I? If there was a third person present, upon hearing Aster's words, they would definitely think that Noah was an inhumane scum who abandoned his wife after using her, right? Noah could only cover his face and couldn't say anything. Aster, you're still young, so you can't think about these things, okay? However, this didn't convince Aster at all. I already existed 1,000 years ago. Aster stared at Noah. According to my memories, no matter which world it is, there shouldn't be a human that has existed longer than me. Can't you consider it from the outside? No. Why? Because I'm Master's beloved sword. It's natural for me to become Master's possession. But you're already considered mine, right? Didn't we promise to be together forever? If that's the case, then Master should take everything away from me. Can't you reconsider? No. Why? Because it's very unfair. Noah finally reacted. He almost forgot. What this sword spirit girl hated the most was unfairness and differential treatment. Aster must be jealous of Noah's intimate attitude towards Mira and Lisanna. Please close your eyes, Master. Aster once again moved her tender face towards Noah. Just leave everything to me, Yizichin said. Wasn't the person who was supposed to say this line backwards? Seeing Aster close her eyes, pouting her lips, and her cute face getting closer and closer, Noah, who was at the end of his rope, started to give up on himself. Why not just make the best of it? When this choice that meant Noah would lose something important to him forever sprouted in his heart, and when Aster's lips were about to touch Noah's lips once more, even the heavens couldn't stand it anymore. Bam! Following a loud sound, Noah's bedroom door was forcefully slammed open. Then, a black aura that caused the entire room to tremble suddenly filled the air. Noah, who was startled, quickly turned his head and looked in the direction of the door. There, Yair maintained the posture of pushing the door open. Her head was lowered, and the fringe in front of her forehead covered her beautiful face, making it impossible to see her expression. However, the black aura that surged out of Yair's body caused a sinister wind to blow through the room, causing Noah's hair to stand on end. Aster, on the other hand, opened her eyes. She first glanced at Yair, who was emitting black aura at the door, and then looked back at Noah as if nothing had happened. She reached out and hugged Noah's neck. Master, we've been discovered. That monotonous voice sounded like the greatest provocation to Yair's ears. As a result, Yair's delicate body began to tremble. The pair of fallen angel wings on her back also began to tremble. The black gas that surged out of her body became even denser. She looked like a ferocious beast that was about to break free from its cage. It made people feel an astonishing, ferocious aura. Noah couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Then, Yair abruptly raised her head, revealing a face that could make any man drool, right in front of Noah's eyes. However, that beautiful face of hers in the past was now filled with a horrifying expression that would wake up any man who was infatuated with Yair's beauty in an instant. Lord Noah! Yair walked unsteadily towards Noah like a zombie. Undoubtedly, I can do it anytime I want, but you've rejected me time and time again. Now, you're hiding in your room and doing something so enviable with that elf over there. Lord Noah, don't you think this is really unfair? Looking at Yair's cursed body, Noah's heart trembled with fear. Calm down, Yair. Anyway, calm down first, okay? Yair's beautiful face twisted. How am I supposed to calm down? An astonishing roar reverberated throughout the underground 9th floor of the Nasaric underground tomb. Chapter 12:22. After the fight between Aster and Yair, although Noah was in an extremely sorry state, it had to be said that his mood had improved a lot. Although he still felt extremely guilty about what had happened to Xiataya, Noah wasn't a sloppy person to begin with. He understood that if he blindly blamed himself and felt guilty, it wouldn't change the current situation at all. Therefore, after the fight between Aster and Yair, Noah calmed down a little and suppressed his guilt toward Shadia. No matter what, he had to let Shadia return to her original state first. After Xiataya recovered, he would compensate her. Thinking of this, Noah calmed down and came out of the bedroom. How is it? In the office, Noah, who was sitting in a black leather chair, looked through the luxurious desk in front of him and cast his gaze on Demiurgos standing in front of him. Did you find an ambush by the Lien theocracy around Shadia? After Satya was mentally controlled, she was thrown to the ground. She didn't receive any orders and stayed there alone. The current Shadia was like a monster that appeared in the wild in a game. As long as someone approached, she would attack. As long as someone attacked, she would counterattack. If one ignored Shadia and went around her, she would also be like a monster that appeared in the wild in a game. She would only stay in one place and would not react. The reason for this situation was that Shadia did not receive the orders of the ruler after being mentally controlled. Previously, Yair guessed that the reason why Shadia did not receive the order was that the final counterattack knocked down the ruler. However, It was also possible that the ruler deliberately did not give Shadia an order and let her stay in the wild to lure out her companions. In addition, the main body of the world-class item that caused Shadia to be mentally controlled was still unknown. If one recklessly came into contact with Shadia, it was very likely that it would cause a chain reaction or trigger the triggering condition of the world-class item and trigger the power of mental control again. Due to various considerations, it was definitely not beneficial to come into contact with Shadia before the investigation was clear. In view of this, when Noah returned, he had Demiurgos in charge of investigating Zacia's surroundings. Lord Noah, we have indeed discovered some abnormalities. Demiurgos lowered his head and said respectfully, although we didn't discover any ambushes from the Celian theocracy in Zatia's surroundings, we discovered that someone was using intelligence magic to monitor Zatia's surroundings. As expected? Noah curled his lips. That's normal. I would be surprised if there was no surveillance. It didn't matter if they had intentionally left Shadia in the wilderness to ambush her, or if they had been killed by Shadia's desperate counterattack and had lost the ability to control her. The Syrian theocracy who had left Shadia in the wilderness would definitely keep an eye on her. Even the members of the sacred scripture of sunshine, who were supposed to be his companions, were under the surveillance of the Syrian theocracy, let alone an actual enemy like Zacia. However, the Syrian theocracy's surveillance shouldn't have existed since the beginning, right? Noah knocked on the table in front of him. When I went to Zatia's side, I didn't feel like I was being watched. That's not the case, Lord Noah. After we discovered Zatia's abnormality, we sent troops to investigate. At that time, we had already discovered that a third party was using intelligence magic to monitor Zatia, Demiurgos said. In order to prevent the information from leaking, we set up a barrier around Zatia that can block the detection of intelligence magic. Please forgive us for acting on our own accord. No, you did the right thing. You did nothing wrong. Noah shook his head. Then, apart from that, what other measures did you take? At first, it was only to this extent. Now, we are continuously setting up barriers around Zatia that can block the activation of teleportation magic to prevent the enemy from using teleportation magic to launch a sneak attack while we are dealing with Zatia. Demiurgos pushed up his glasses. Also, although we have confirmed that there are no ambushes around Zatia, we have yet to confirm whether there are any magic traps around Zatia. We are currently organizing an investigation team to eliminate them. In addition, considering that the enemy might be borrowing the power of magic tools, we are also preparing to set up measures against magic tools around Zatia, Demiurgos said cautiously. Currently, that's all we can think of for the time being. What do you think, Lord Noah? Let's organize another team that can use detection and intelligence magic, Noah added after pondering for a moment. Although we've taken sufficient measures against outsiders, we still need to spend some effort on Satya. We need to get someone who can use detection magic to investigate Satya's situation. Otherwise, if we attack Satya rashly, it's very likely that we'll trigger a world-class tool, mind control. That's not necessarily the case. Understood. Demiurgos nodded solemnly. Regardless of whether there was an ambush by the Celian theocracy around Zatia, Zatia's mind control was an extremely serious problem. Even Zatia, a level 100 NPC who was undying, was affected by mind control. In that case, there was probably no one in the large underground tomb in Nasaric who could resist the same effect. If a second person was affected by mind control, it would be troublesome. After all, no one knew if the world-class item used on Zatia would have the same effect on people who were too close to her. Therefore, he had to be very careful with his detection. In addition, it is very likely that the other party has obtained some information about the large underground tomb in Nasaric from Zatia. Noah glanced at Demiurgos. Therefore, put the entire large underground tomb in Nasaric on alert. Yes. Demiurgos nodded his head obediently and replied, "By the way, Lord Noah, we have arranged spies around Zatia according to your instructions. We have discovered that Yi Lantil, who is the closest to here, seems to be moving." Yi Lantil, Noah frowned. What's the matter? I guess the battle between Zatia and the Celian theocracy has attracted Yi Lantil's attention, Demiurgos said. According to the informant, Elantil has already sent out adventurers to attack the powerful magical creature that appeared near Khan village. The target of the attack is very likely Zatia. Oh! Noah looked at Demyugos. Why are you so sure that the other party is planning to attack Zatia? There are 2 reasons, Demyugos replied respectfully. First, the scale of the adventurers sent by the other party is very large. In the vicinity, it is impossible that there would be a target that requires such a large team to attack other than Zatia. Second, the other party's route is completely in the direction of Khan village. There is no mistake. A team of adventurers? Noah asked thoughtfully. What kind of scale? All of them are at least silver rank, Demyugos said. In terms of teams, there are 30 silver rank adventurers teams, 10 gold rank adventurers teams, 5 platinum rank adventurers teams, and 3 secret silver adventurers teams. The total number of people is more than 200. This scale is indeed not used to attack ordinary magical creatures. Noah smacked his lips. Really, one wave after another. After saying that, Noah stood up and glanced in the direction of the corner as he spoke helplessly. He helplessly said, Yair Bade, how long are you going to maintain that appearance? Yair Bade, who was curled up in the corner like a child with his back facing them, turned his head slightly. His beautiful face was filled with tears. Obviously, Yair Bade was still concerned about the matter between Noah and Aster. At that moment, Noah sighed and walked in the direction of the door. Yair Bade, if you plan to continue like that, then I won't bring you out. Hearing that, Yair Bade jumped up as if he was flying. While flapping the wings on his back, he chased after Noah. Seeing this, Demyugos hurriedly followed. Chapter 12:23. The warm sunlight shone down from the sky and shone on the seemingly endless plains. The earth seemed to be dyed with a layer of golden color. It was unusually dazzling. At a certain moment, on the edge of such a plain, a group of people riding horses quietly appeared. It was a group of people wearing completely different equipment. Rather than a group of people, it was better to say that it was a group of people forced together by several groups of people to move together. The number of these people was about 200. Moreover, they were basically all men. And these people all had one thing in common. That was, on their necks they all wore a metal plate. Some wore metal plates made of silver. Some wore metal plates made of gold. There were even some who were wearing precious metal plates made of platinum. Under the sunlight, the metal plates glowed with dazzling colors. In this world, there was only one kind of human who would wear metal plates like this. That was the adventurers. These people riding horses, galloping from the edge of the plain, were all adventurers. Moreover, they were adventurers who were at least silver level and above. In such a group of adventurers who were at least silver level, there were also gold level adventurers, and there were even platinum level adventurers. This was a very rare scene, because, generally speaking, whether it was a kingdom, an empire, or a theocracy, the adventurers of platinum level and above accounted for about 20% of the adventurers in the country. And in the kingdom, the number of adventurers was about 3,000 people. Based on this ratio, in the kingdom, there were only about 600 adventurers of platinum level and above. In this way, perhaps it did not reflect the preciousness of the adventurers of platinum level and above. But if this data was compared to the population of the kingdom, it was much more obvious. According to estimates, the total population of the kingdom was more than 8 million. Among these 8 million people, there were only 3,000 adventurers, and only 600 adventurers of platinum level and above. If this was the case, then it was understandable, right? That was right. There were so few adventurers of platinum level and above. But in this group of people, there were at least 30 platinum level adventurers. In addition to the rest of the silver level and gold level adventurers, the strength of the group was already to the point that it was not strange to use them in a war. But this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that at the front of this group of people, there were 3 adventurer teams wearing even more noble metal plates. It was a metal plate made of mithril. In other words, at the front of this group of people, there were 3 mithril adventurer teams that were above platinum level adventurers. Kralgla, Sky Wolf, Rainbow, These three teams of mithril adventurers were the strongest adventurer teams in Yelantir. However, Yelantir didn't have any mountain copper rank that was higher than mithril rank. As for the highest grade, the fine steel grade, there were only two in the entire kingdom. It was even more impossible for Yelantil to have one. Yelantir's adventurers teams. Yelantir's adventurer teams. Yelantir of Yelantir's adventurer teams. Yelantir Yelantir. In this way, the leaders of the three mithril adventurer teams became the leaders of the entire adventurer team. They were the three strong men who took the lead and charged at the front of the large group. Kralgla's leader, Igvok. Skywolf's leader, Palati. Rainbow's leader, Moknek. The leaders of the three mithril adventurer teams showed their leadership at this time. They rode their horses and rode at the front of the large group, leading the large group of adventurers that totaled more than 200 as they galloped on the boundless plains. Rumble. Numerous sounds of horse hooves converged together, forming a rumbling sound that made the earth tremble. Dense smoke and dust rose behind the group of horses as the large adventurer team galloped, filling the space of the plains. Looking at the vast momentum, it really gave people a feeling that even if they were fighting on the battlefield, these 200 people would be able to flatten a vast army. It was precisely because this large group of adventurers was so large that some people were puzzled. Such a large group, it should be enough to go against the army of the Empire, right? Igvok smacked his lips. It's just to deal with a mere monster. Is there a need to mobilize such a large group of adventurers? In order to better suppress monsters and prevent humans from being harmed by monsters, almost every city's adventurers guild would regularly organize magic chanters who were proficient in intelligence magic to explore the surrounding areas of the city. From there, they would find the settlements of various monster tribes and the location of powerful monsters. A few days ago, the Adventurers Guild just happened to conduct a survey. As a result, they found that there was an individual with an astonishing magic reaction in this area. That terrifying magic reaction was definitely not at the level that a human could have. And after further investigation, the Adventurers Guild also confirmed that individual was not a human, but an undead that hated the living. Therefore, the entire Adventurers Guild fell into chaos and an emergency meeting was held. Those who participated in the meeting were not only the Guild Master of the Adventurers Guild, but also the Guild Master of the Mages Guild and the Mayor of the city in Yelantir, as well as the leaders of the three most advanced mithril adventurer teams in the city. After a round of discussion, the entire upper echelon of Yelantir felt that it was too dangerous to allow the undead with an astonishing magic reaction to continue existing. The undead generally hated the living. If they were allowed to continue existing, perhaps the other party would use its terrifying power to carry out a massacre in the surroundings, to the extent that it would threaten the safety of the entire Yelantir city. In view of this, the Adventurers Guild, the Mages Guild, and the mayor of the city all decided to jointly fund and hire a large number of high-level adventurer teams, including 3 mithril adventurer teams, to form a large team to crusade against the monster that appeared near Khan village. Igvok had always felt disdain towards this. It's just an undead, not a giant snake monster. Isn't it too much of a fuss to actually mobilize so many people? The undead were basically born from death. Moreover, in the beginning, it was basically impossible for an overly powerful undead to be born. The existence of the undead was actually like a venomous worm. Only in a large number of undead would there be a high possibility of an even more powerful undead being born. Therefore, under normal circumstances, the powerful undead would be surrounded by an extremely large number of low-level undead. There were very few powerful undead that existed individually. Therefore, knowing that the opponent this time was only a single undead, Igvok was so disdainful. It had to be said that Igvok's arrogant speech made the leaders of the other 2 mithril adventurer teams very unhappy. Moreover, this was not the first time Igvok had spoken like this. At that moment, Parodi and Moknak, who were also the leaders, looked at each other and said what they had said countless times before. Since the Adventurers Guild and the Mages Guild have already used the intelligence magic to confirm, then there's definitely no mistake. We can't be careless. Otherwise, it wouldn't be strange if we were to die at any time. Igvok let out a cold snort when he heard Parodi and Moknak's words. I say, no matter what, you guys are the leaders of mithril adventurer teams like me. Isn't it too embarrassing to be so afraid of an undead? Such a sentence made Parodi and Moknak furious. However, considering the harmony of the team, the leaders of the two mithril adventurer teams chose to tolerate it. After all, they were not as arrogant and foolish as Igvok. Let's cut the crap, Parodi said with a straight face. We're almost at our destination. If we continue to complain, it would be too embarrassing for us as adventurers. It's time for the people behind to prepare for battle, Moknak said in a similarly unfriendly tone. Don't be caught off guard by the enemy and cause unnecessary casualties. Igvok turned his head away without saying anything. However, when he turned his head away, Igvok was suddenly startled and exclaimed in surprise. What's that? As soon as he said that, Wang! A huge magic light beam suddenly shot out from the front. Chapter 12:24. Amidst the reverberations of space, a gigantic magical beam that was about 2 meters in diameter abruptly appeared over the boundless plains. It cut through space, rubbing against the air as it streaked straight towards the group of adventurers. The group of adventurers didn't even have time to react before the huge mana beam suddenly shot over and landed on the ground not far in front of Igvaki, Parodi, and Moknak. The sudden appearance of the magical beam didn't directly bombard the ground. Instead, it was like a laser that swept across the ground in front of the group of adventurers. Boom! 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 In an instant, wherever the laser-like magic power beam swept across the ground was blasted apart, setting off astonishing shockwaves and sand. Pieces of gravel shot out in all directions like bullets fired from a gun. The sudden huge commotion caused the horses carrying the adventurers to let out frightened neighs. Without the consent of the riders, they abruptly stopped, straightened their upper bodies, and kicked their powerful front legs in midair. The adventurers riding on the horses all fell down one by one due to the violent movements of the horses in a state of panic and landed heavily on the ground, letting out painful groans. In just a short while, the group of adventurers who were advancing on the plains like a vast army fell into a state of panic. Some of the adventurers were even trampled by the violent horses. If it weren't for the fact that these adventurers were strong and equipped with a certain degree of equipment, they would definitely have been injured under the hooves of the horses. Now, they were considered lucky that they were only in a state of chaos. Don't panic, Parodi, who also fell from his horse, hurriedly yelled. Everyone, calm down. Quickly adjust your posture. Prepare for battle. Moknak also yelled. It's very likely that the enemy has already attacked. From this point of view, Parodi and Moknak were indeed the leaders of the Secret Silver Adventurers team. They were calm in the face of danger and had the mentality to deal with any unexpected situation. Only Igvaki, instead of paying attention to his companions, focused more on the attacker who made a fool of himself. Who's there? Igvaki roared furiously at his surroundings. Who's playing tricks here? Come out. Igvaki's voice turned into an echo that reverberated in the sky above the plains. About 2 to 3 seconds later, a voice that was so cold that it was close to terrifying reverberated in the space in response to Igvaki's words. How dare you speak to our supreme honorable like that? You deserve to die. Along with this sentence, a terrifying evil aura expanded in the entire space. It was a terrifying aura like that of a ferocious ghost that emerged from hell. Bathed in such a terrifying aura, all the adventurers from Year Lantir present stiffened. Their faces turned ghastly pale in an instant. They looked as though they were being stared at by a ferocious beast and didn't even dare to move. Soon after, the sand and dust that filled the entire space gradually settled down, allowing the frozen adventurers to see the scene in front of them clearly. It was only then that all the adventurers present saw it. There was a rock about 100 meters in front of them. There were figures standing around the rock. Although they were more than 100 meters away, the adventurers could still see the full appearance of those figures clearly. The first thing that caught the attention of all the adventurers present was a figure that made all the pale-faced adventurers widen their eyes in shock. It was a young girl. She seemed to be guarding the side of the rock and was standing under the rock. She was the closest to the rock. The young girl's appearance could be said to be breathtaking. She was so beautiful that it was truly tragic. She even had a gentle smile on her face, as though she was a goddess that descended from the sky. However, behind such a goddess, there was a pair of pitch-black wings near her lower waist. It was that pair of pitch-black wings that made all the adventurers tremble. Looking at that beautiful figure that was both sacred and evil, Parodi inadvertently murmured, "Demon, demon, a demon that brought destruction with violence, a demon that brought about depravity with wisdom." This kind of otherworldly existence was collectively known as the demon. It was said that it was an extremely ferocious and evil demon. The meaning of its existence was to eliminate all the good people who had reason. It was also the so-called synonym for evil. Among the people present, there was almost no one who didn't know about the existence of the demon. It was because more than 200 years ago, it brought a huge disaster to the world and was finally eliminated by the 13 heroes. The evil existence known as the demon god was the king of the demon. This demon king led an army of demons and almost wiped out all the intelligent races in this world. If the undead were demons that hated the living, then the demon would be demons that tortured the living. If they encountered the undead, they would at most die. But if they encountered the demon, they would truly be better off dead. Who wouldn't be afraid of such an existence? What's more, the demon there wasn't just the unbelievably beautiful young girl alone. Not far from the girl, there was a man with a long steel tail, wearing a strange suit, and looking like an ordinary human male. Although he looked like a human male, the steel tail behind him and the evil aura that pervaded his body told everyone present that he wasn't a human. He was definitely not a human, but a demon. On the other side of the demon couple, on the other side of the rock, there was a pair of dark elf twins. Pair of demons. Pair of dark elves. The two waited on both sides of the rock, facing forward. Furthermore, there were two other figures standing there. One of them was an old man who was over 50 years old and wore a butler's uniform, but his back was extremely straight. The other had a terrifying appearance. His appearance was like an ant, but also like an insect, and his entire body was covered in the color of ice. These people surrounded the ordinary-looking rock in the middle as if they were protecting something. They expressionlessly looked in the direction of the adventurers. Then, on the rock surrounded by these beings, a person sat on it. It was a young man with black hair and black eyes, wearing pitch-black casual clothes and a white coat. Compared to the existences below the rock, the young man didn't have a terrifying appearance. However, judging from the support of those terrifying existences, the young man sitting at the top was clearly the one who was leading those terrifying existences. Cold sweat began to appear on the foreheads of the adventurers. The people surrounding the rock emitting terrifying existences and evil auras made the adventurers wail in their hearts, and they constantly had the urge to escape. Such fear made Igvaki shout out loud, "Who are you people?" Such a sentence made the evil aura of those terrifying existences surge even more intensely. Mere ants of a lower race. Demiugos pushed up his glasses and looked up. "Kneel." Just as Demiugo's voice reverberated in the space of the plains, the adventurers who were at least silver rank and above all felt their hearts tremble, and their bodies involuntarily moved. Accompanied by a series of sounds, the adventurers, including Igvaki, Paladi, and Moknak, who could rival an army, all involuntarily knelt on the ground. It wasn't because these adventurers were so timid that they were frightened by Demiugo's words. Instead, Demiugo's words contained a magical power that none of them could resist. Moknak's expression changed drastically. Spiritual attack. Yes, the reason why the adventurers involuntarily knelt was because Demiugos had a special ability to make others listen to his order's domination spell. Looking at the group of adventurers kneeling in unison, Noah, who was sitting on the rock, spoke indifferently. "Adventurers, return to where you belong." Chapter 12:25. Adventurers, return to where you belong. When such a sentence was carried by the wind and drilled into the ears of the adventurers who were kneeling on the ground and were unable to get up no matter what, those adventurers were all startled. Noah, on the other hand, ignored those adventurers' startled expressions and continued speaking as if he was talking to himself. I know that you intend to deal with the undying that appeared here, but that undying is my servant, and not someone that you should deal with. Servant. The adventurers led by Igvaki, Parodi, and Maknak revealed shocked expressions. In this world, the meaning of the word servant was not ordinary. Usually, if a human called a magical creature their servant, then under normal circumstances, the servant here referred to the summoned magical creature. Just like the Holy Book of Sunlight of the Celian cult, the angels summoned by the magic chanters of the faith system, who were at least able to use third-grade magic, were their servants. Similar situations were not rare. Summoning magic existed in every system of magic. Some magic chanters could use summoning magic to summon goblins. Some magic chanters could use summoning magic to summon ogres. Some magic chanters could use summoning magic to summon lizardmen. Even in legends, there were magic chanters who could use summoning magic to summon the most powerful race, the giant dragon. All kinds of magical creatures could be summoned by magic chanters and controlled and ordered through corresponding magic. Among them, it naturally included the undying. However, the more powerful the magical creature was, the more advanced the summoning magic would be required to summon it and control it. Now, that human sitting on the rock was saying that the powerful undying that made the entire Ye-Lanters higher-ups tremble, and that they did not hesitate to send out 3 mithril adventurer teams, 5 platinum-ranked adventurer teams, 10 gold-ranked adventurer teams, and 30 silver-ranked adventurer teams, to form a team of more than 200 people to go on a crusade, was his servant? To be able to summon a magical creature of that level, what kind of magic was that? Thinking of this, all the adventurers trembled. This was because, as previously mentioned, the level of adventurers and the level of magic corresponded. Bronze and iron adventurers were generally equivalent to magic chanters who could use first-grade magic. Silver and gold adventurers were generally equivalent to magic chanters who could use second-grade magic. Platinum-ranked and mithril adventurers were generally equivalent to magic chanters who could use third-grade magic. Platinum-ranked adventurers were generally equivalent to magic chanters who could use fourth-grade magic. Adventurers of the highest level were generally equivalent to magic chanters who could use fifth-grade magic. The strength of the magical creatures summoned by different levels of summoning magic could also be applied to this classification system. First-grade magic could summon magic chanters of bronze or iron level. Second-grade magic could summon of silver or gold-rank silver to summon silver ore. Based on this logic, a fourth-grade summoning spell would be able to summon a bronze-grade monster, while a fifth-grade summoning spell would be able to summon a steel-grade monster. Even the Adventurers Guild had no choice but to send out 3 mithril adventurers to lead a crusade against it. No matter how one looked at it, it should be stronger than mithril adventurers, right? And to send out such a large number of adventurers, it couldn't just summon magic of bronze level, right? It was even possible that magic of bronze level was stronger than magic of steel level. Summoning magic that could summon magic of bronze level? Conservatively speaking, it had to be the highest level of magic that humans could control, which was the 6th-grade magic of bronze level. This youth, who looked to be around 20 years old, was a magic chanter who could use 6th-grade magic? That's impossible! Igvaki cried out loudly. There is no one who can use 6th-grade magic in the kingdom. There is only one in the empire. Do you think I will believe your nonsense? Igvok's words made the NPCs guarding the Nasaric tomb next to the rock Noah was sitting on focus their gazes on him. Those gazes were filled with an unprecedented murderous aura. Igvok, who was only secret silver level and had not even reached level 20, was targeted by the murderous aura of 6 level 100 NPCs. His vision turned black, and his chest tightened. His blood began to surge. If this continued, Igvaki would definitely spit out a mouthful of blood, right? Fortunately, Noah's voice saved Igvok. Whether you believe it or not has nothing to do with me. I am just giving you some advice because I know a few people in the kingdom who are also adventurers. Noah glanced at Igvok. There is a problem with my servant. She no longer obeys my orders. I can't control her for the time being. If you want to come over, I won't stop you. But what happens to you has nothing to do with me." All of the NPCs in Nazarik's underground tomb smiled at the sight of this. It was a smile that was directly linked to cruelty. That smile made all the adventurers feel like they were not far from death. For a moment, they were completely frozen in place, unable to move. The only ones who could remain calm were Paladi and Machnak. The leaders of the two Secret Silver adventurers looked at each other, then looked at Noah. Parodi carefully asked as if he was offering his respect. "Can we ask for your name, sir?" "Why?" Noah looked at Paladi with a faint smile. "Since you can't resist, you should at least find out about my background and report back?" Paladi's expression froze. Obviously, Noah was right. "We definitely don't mean to suspect you," Machnak quickly spoke up for Paladi. "We just want to know the name of the person who can have such a powerful undying as your servant." "All right, there is no need for flattery. I am just giving you a piece of advice," Noah said indifferently. "Moreover, my servant is now under the control of an unknown spirit. I am also worried about how to deal with her. I don't want to be disturbed by outsiders. Do you understand what I mean?" Noah pursed his lips. "Or rather, you can do me a big favor and help me investigate the situation of that disobedient servant." Paladi and Machnak immediately shut their mouths. Only Igvaki stared at Noah with resentment. The fear in his heart turned into extreme anger under Noah's superior attitude, causing him to mock him. "I think you are a human traitor who defected to the Undying. You plan to collude with the Undying to harm us humans, right?" The NPCs in the Nasarik underground tomb suddenly raised their heads. Their eyes were filled with violent murderous intent again. However, this time, before the NPCs in the Nasarik underground tomb locked their murderous intent on Igvaki, Noah looked directly at the guy who did not even understand that a wise man submits to circumstances. "If humans are as stupid as you, then there must be many traitors who want to defect to the Undying, right?" Igvaki's eyes were filled with anger. Just as he was about to say something, Noah beat him to it. "Anyway, that's all I want to say. If you don't want to die, it's best that you don't come here. Go back to Yelantir and tell the people of the kingdom not to interfere with the matters here." After saying that, Noah looked at Igvaki. His pitch-black eyes suddenly turned a cold, silver-white color. "Also, you really make people feel very uncomfortable." As these words were spoken, Igvaki's body gradually turned into steel under the gaze of the ice-cold silver-white eyes. What is this? No, stop. Ah!" As he screamed, Igvaki turned into cold steel. The fear on his face froze, and he became a statue. "Ah!" The group of adventurers finally let out sorrowful cries out of fear. Chapter 12:26. On the rock, Noah looked at the group of adventurers riding their horses at a speed faster than when they came, as if they were running for their lives. His expression did not change much from the beginning to the end. "Lord Noah," Demiurgos said softly, "forgive me for being blunt, but why didn't Lord Noah kill all those inferior humans?" Most of the NPCs in Nazarik's underground tomb nodded in agreement. They had the same idea as Demiurgos. Because of Zacia's matter, Noah had the people of Nazarik's underground tomb completely seal off the surrounding area. Even though it was just a vast grassland, who knew how many monsters from Nazarik's underground tomb were hiding here? Just now, if Noah hadn't appeared and the human adventurers stepped into this area, the monsters hiding in the dark would have suddenly launched an attack and killed all the adventurers. No one doubted that any of the adventurers would be able to escape. After all, compared to the monsters in the underground tomb, the humans in this world were generally not very strong. Even Gujefu, who was known as the strongest warrior in the kingdom, was only level 35. Among the humans, there wasn't even a single magician who could use 7th level spells. How could they fight against the monsters in the underground tomb? In Nazarik's underground tomb, even the monsters that could respawn and appear on their own were only around level 30. With the power of humans, They were no match for most of the magical creatures that could regenerate and appear on their own, not to mention the high-level magical creatures that required money to summon. The monster that had sealed off the area was precisely this type of high-level monster. Among them, the lowest level was level 60, and the highest was level 85. Moreover, there were more than 300 level 60 monsters. Although there weren't that many level 85 monsters, there were still 3 lying in ambush around Zatia. In this world, there was almost no one who could break through such a force. It would be very easy for them to kill the human adventurers who weren't even level 20. The NPCs in Nazarik's underground graveyard couldn't understand why Noah would show up and let these people go. In response, Noah did not hide anything and directly spoke his thoughts. I already said that it's just a piece of advice. I'll only do it this once. After saying that, Noah looked at Igvaki, who had turned into cold steel, and closed his eyes. If they ignore my words and still want to come, then I won't be merciful. Noah really couldn't stand the indiscriminate killing of the innocent. That was why Noah had specially made a trip to give the adventurers a piece of advice. Now, he had given the advice. If the adventurers didn't intend to listen and still wanted to interfere, then Noah wouldn't be so idle as to put on airs in front of them. To this extent, he had already done his utmost benevolence. Everyone had to be responsible for their own choices. It was just like how Noah had chosen to let the NPCs in the underground tomb of Nasarik capture the people of the Celian theocracy alive. In the end, it caused Zatia to be mentally dominated and fall to the point where she had no choice but to fight with Zatia. Demiurgos. At that moment, Noah asked Demiurgos softly, "The defense network should be more or less built, right?" "Yes." Demiurgos lowered his head and bowed slightly. "Whether it's the defensive wall to block intelligence magic or teleportation magic, it has been built. The magic traps and magic tools have also been set up. In addition, the monsters in the underground tomb of Nasarik have sealed the surrounding area. Considering the power of the creatures in this world, we can rest assured that we can act on Zatia's matter." "Is that so?" Noah continued to ask. "Then have you investigated clearly? If you come into contact with Zatia, will it trigger the same mental domination power?" "This? We haven't investigated clearly yet." Demiurgos seemed to find it difficult to speak, as if blaming himself for not doing a good job. He lowered his head even more. "Although we haven't discovered anything yet, we can't rule out the possibility that if we come into contact with Zatia, the world-class tool that can control Zatia's mind won't be triggered and affect the people who come into contact with her." "Is that so?" Noah opened his eyes, looked in Zatia's direction, and murmured, "You still can't be sure?" "I'm really sorry." Demiurgos bowed deeply. "Lord Noah, please give me a little more time. 3 days will be enough. I'll definitely give the Supreme Lord a satisfactory answer." "No need," Noah said indifferently. "You don't have to interfere with Zatia's matter. Let me handle it." "Wah?" Demiurgos' expression changed. It wasn't just Demiurgos. Even the other NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasarik were shocked. "Please wait." Yair Bade stepped forward and hurriedly said, "That's too dangerous." "That's right. Lord Noah." Yauda also hurriedly said, "We haven't confirmed whether the same mental domination power will affect the people who come into contact with that idiot Zatia, right?" That's too dangerous," Malay said timidly. Lord Noah, why don't you reconsider? This subordinate also thinks that it's inappropriate," Seabass said seriously. "If Lord Noah is also affected by mental domination, what should we do?" "There's no reason for the Supreme Lord to personally take the risk," Kassit said in a deep voice. "Even if we want to suppress Zatia, we should be the ones to do it." The NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasarik all voiced their objections. The objections made Noah smile bitterly. "I'll tell you the truth." Noah looked at the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasarik and said, "Mental domination is ineffective against me, even if it's the power of a world item." The reason why they were so sure was because Noah had 2 special characteristics. The first was the curse resistance of the God Slayer. It was a foul physique that could repel all mysteries other than those that could affect gods. Unless he could control a god, the mind control used on Satya was ineffective on Noah. Even if the mind domination couldn't nullify the curse resistance of the god slayer, Noah still had the three great constitutions. One of the three great constitutions allowed Noah to be immune to any negative effects. The effects on the mind were also in the same category. To be honest, I'm not afraid of the mind domination of a world item, nor am I afraid that the Syrian theocracy will come out of nowhere. I asked you to make so many arrangements because I'm worried that the Syrian theocracy might still be secretly controlling Zatia and have to be cut off. Another reason is that I don't want to be disturbed. Noah was silent for a while. Then he finally said what was on his mind. In addition, I also need some time to reflect on myself for causing Zatia's mind domination. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had to wait until now to deal with Zatia. The NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nassarik fell silent. In fact, everyone present knew that Noah didn't make so many arrangements just for the reasons he said. There was another, most important reason, which was for his subordinates. The mind domination that could work on Zatia would definitely work on the other NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nassarik. In order to prevent the others from falling into the same mind domination, Noah had to make so many arrangements to avoid being schemed against by the Syrian theocracy. As for Noah himself, he wasn't afraid of the mind domination or the Syrian theocracy's ambush. If it weren't for the other NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nassarik, he could have just crushed them and dealt with Zatia's matter. After all, even if Noah did not use the Demon Slayer and the Gate of Babylon, he would still be able to reach the maximum level of 100. There was no need for him to worry so much. In other words, it was Nassarik who was holding Noah back. After understanding this, the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nassarik were filled with dark emotions. Not only was he of no use, but he was also a hindrance to the person he was willing to give everything to. He was resentful of himself. Yair Bade couldn't help but say this because of this feeling. Lord Noah, please leave the matter of suppressing Zatia to us. No, leave it to me alone. If I show signs of mind domination, I'll kill myself. The eyes of the other NPCs lit up. It was obvious that Yair Bade's suggestion had tempted the others. As for death, it wasn't scary at all for these NPCs. What the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nassarik were really afraid of was not being able to serve Noah and disappointing Noah. Understanding this, Noah couldn't say anything to reprimand him. However, that didn't mean that Noah would agree. Zatia was under mind domination because of my orders. Noah looked at everyone present. I want to deal with this matter personally. His unquestionable tone made the NPCs unable to refute. Only then did Noah turn his head and look in a certain direction. Zatia was there. Chapter 12:27. Whoosh! A cold breeze blew across the vast plain, causing the clouds in the sky to move with the wind and cover the sun. The ground that was originally illuminated by the sun began to be covered with a layer of shadow. Under such circumstances, the noble princess-like Satya was still like a marionette. Her body was hanging down as if she was suspended by an invisible string, without any vitality. At a certain moment, a figure flew over like a meteor and landed on the ground not far from Satya. Looking up at Satya, who was hanging there like a marionette, Noah's emotions fluctuated slightly. The guilt he felt toward Satya had been suppressed deep in his heart. If this guilt were to appear before Satya was restored to her original state, it would not be beneficial for the upcoming battle. Therefore, Noah's current emotions were purely a lament for a beautiful thing turning into a lifeless object. It had to be said that in terms of appearance, although Satya looked very young and was far from being as mature as Yerbeda, she had an unparalleled charm. Such a beautiful girl had now become a lifeless marionette. Anyone would feel that it was a pity. Noah's emotions were more intense than pure pity. After all, the other party was someone Noah knew. She was someone who was still alive and kicking. Of course, Noah understood. As long as he got close to her or launched an attack, that lifeless doll-like girl would instantly turn into a terrifying beast that surpassed any magical creature in this world. Speaking of which, Satya seems to have always wanted me to whip her. Noah bitterly smiled, and then the bitter smile on his face turned into his usual calmness. Although it's not what I want, Satya, I'll satisfy you today. The moment he said that, Noah's pitch-black eyes suddenly turned into a cold silver-white color. An invisible magic power fluctuated. Following the gaze of the pair of ice-cold silver eyes, it was projected onto Satya, whose upper body was hanging down like a marionette. Paji, Paji, Paji. Accompanied by the sound of ice freezing, Satya's petite body gradually turned into the color of steel and was covered by cold steel. Noah's cold refinement had the ability to change the strength of the effect depending on the enemy's strength and level. If it was a small character like Igvaki who had not even reached level 20, it would take less than 3 seconds to turn him into steel. However, as a level 100 existence, Satya could not compare to Igvaki at all. Therefore, when Noah's cold smelting took effect on Satya's body, even after 3 seconds, it could only temper Satya's ankles. In that instant, a dense evil aura, murderous aura, and bloody aura surged out from Satya's body as she hung there like a marionette. Then Noah saw it. Satya, whose upper body was hanging down like a marionette without a trace of vitality, suddenly raised her head. Her pair of empty scarlet eyes quickly emitted a red light, and her coquettish little mouth cracked open as she suddenly burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha! Amidst the pleasant laughter that sounded like silver bells, a pair of bat-like wings suddenly spread out from Satya's back and flapped abruptly. Boom! The charred ground where Satya was standing suddenly exploded. Just like that, the true ancestor of the vampires shot out like an arrow off the line. Riding the wind, she flapped her wings and shot toward Noah with an excited and ferocious smile on her beautiful face. In her hand, a ray of light suddenly bloomed and transformed into a strangely shaped spear that reminded one of the huge pipettes used in chemistry class. It was the only artifact that Satya possessed, the pipette. It was an artifact that could absorb damage to the opponent and use it to recover physical strength and injuries. Ha 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 ha! Amidst a burst of delightful laughter, Zaisha arrived in front of Noah. Under Noah's calm gaze, a bloodthirsty expression appeared on her pretty face as she fiercely stabbed the pike in her hand at Noah. Bang! It was just a simple stab, but a violent shockwave spread out with the pike in Zaisha's hand as the center, setting off a shocking sandstorm that enveloped Noah's entire body. Ah ha 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 ha! On the other hand, Zaisha seemed to have completely fallen into a frenzy. While letting out delightful laughter, she repeatedly thrusted the pike in her hand into the thick sand and wind that was stirred up by the shockwave. Immediately, a series of muffled explosive sounds reverberated within the dense sand and dust, causing the atmosphere to wail. The ground also trembled, rolling up a terrifying tornado-like air wave. That scene, in the eyes of the third party, was simply violent to the extreme. However, Zaisha did not show any signs of stopping. She continued to let out delightful laughter as she repeatedly stabbed the pike in her hand, setting off waves of sandstorm that swept in all directions. Lord Noah. In the great underground tomb of Nassarik, a group of NPCs who had returned to the stronghold and used intelligence magic to monitor the battle stood up from their seats one after another. Among them, Yair Bell's delicate body even swayed due to her overly violent movements. She looked like she would faint at any moment. At this moment, a projection-like screen appeared in front of the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nassarik. On the screen, Zaisha laughed maniacally as she repeatedly stabbed the pike in her hand, setting off waves of shocking sandstorm that caused the ground to tremble. The violent scene was presented before everyone's eyes. Sure enough, we shouldn't have let Lord Noah fight alone. Demiurgos no longer had his usual calmness. Instead, there was only endless anxiety on his face. We have to provide support as soon as possible. Wait, Demiurgos. Yair Bell's pretty face also had a wavering expression, but she was not as anxious as Demiurgos. She stopped Demiurgos, who was about to leave. That lord won't be in trouble because of an attack of this level. Calm down. But Demiurgos still could not hide the anxiety on his face. Instead, it was Cocytus who stared at the scene on the screen and suddenly spoke. Lord Noah isn't injured at all, right? Hearing this, everyone, including Yair Bel and Demiurgos, looked at Cocytus. Look carefully, said Cocytus, with an accent that seemed to be superimposed on each other. Although Zacia's attack frequency is very high, the Pike's ability has not been used even once. After Cocytus said this, the other NPCs also noticed this. If Zacia had dealt actual damage to Noah, it was impossible that the Pipette Pike, that could absorb the damage dealt to the opponent and recover the wielder's stamina and injuries, had not been activated. Even the NPCs in the distant Nasaric underground graveyard noticed this, so it was impossible for Zacia not to have noticed it. Bang! In the midst of the explosion, Zacia once again stabbed with her pike, causing the sandstorm and violent shockwaves to shake in all directions like an avalanche. This caused the ground to crack inch by inch, spreading cracks everywhere. However, Zacia's maniacal laughter had already stopped, and the battle-thirsty smile on her face gradually disappeared. Her scarlet eyes stared at the thick sandstorm close at hand, and her grip on her pike tightened. After a long while, the sand and dust in the air began to settle down, allowing a figure to slowly emerge. Only then did Zacia notice it. The tip of her pike was piercing a crimson gauntlet. Boost! A voice sounded from the crimson gauntlet. Chapter 12:28. Boost! When such a voice sounded from the crimson gauntlet, a warning sign rose in Satya's heart. At Satya's level, intuition, which was similar to a sixth sense, was more trustworthy than what she saw with her eyes. Therefore, the moment an inexplicable warning rose in her heart, Satya did not think twice and directly raised the pike in her hand to block in front of her. The next moment, a bright vortex of air emerged from the fist wrapped in the crimson gauntlet. At the same time, the arm covered by the crimson gauntlet suddenly clenched into a fist and punched heavily at Satya in front of her. Wherever the fist passed, a sonic boom sounded in the space. The momentum was extremely terrifying. Such a punch directly cut through the space and fiercely landed on the pike that Satya had raised in time to block in front of her. Boom! A loud muffled sound that caused people's eardrums to sting and their heads to go blank resounded in the sky above the plains. The astonishing impact turned into a substantial force that surged on the ground like a tide. At the center of the astonishing force, Satya only felt an extremely terrifying force feedback from the pike in her hand, causing her hand holding the pike to go numb. She was sent flying by the unparalleled force. Goo! Satya inevitably let out a soft groan. It took her a lot of effort to adjust her body in the air and land on the ground. Even so, the tremendous force acting on Satya's body still caused the vampire's feet to rub against the ground, plowing 2 gullies in the ground. When she came to a stop, the soles of her feet in the gullies emitted a sizzling sound, and light smoke rose from them. Satya's steel-like feet helped her instead, preventing her from feeling the pain caused by the violent friction. But even so, Satya still raised her head with a solemn expression and looked ahead. There, the thick sand and dust that filled the space had been blown away by the impact of the shocking punch just now. Then, Noah's figure appeared in front of Satya without any injuries, just like before. His expression was calm from beginning to end. However, in the hands of the calm Noah, there was a crimson gauntlet that could not be ignored no matter what. It was a gauntlet that looked like a ferocious dragon claw. There was also a jade inlaid on the back of the gauntlet. Boost! The voice came from the Bayou. As the voice sounded, Satya was also keenly aware of it. The aura on Noah's body suddenly doubled in strength. There was no doubt that it was the power brought by the gauntlet. Upon understanding this, Satya wasn't alarmed. Instead, she laughed. Just like before, she let out a melodious laughter that sounded like silver bells. As expected of Sir Noah, the supreme ruler of the underground tomb of Nasaric. Sure enough, an attack of that level couldn't do anything to you? Satya, Noah stared at the laughing Satya and narrowed his eyes slightly. I see. Although your mind is controlled, you haven't lost your rationality? What are you talking about? Sir Noah. Satya was like a noble princess. She held the spear in one hand and pressed the other to her chest as she spoke with her head raised and chest out. My condition is unprecedentedly good. It's so good that I can't help but want to suck all the blood from Sir Noah's body. After saying that, Satya stuck out her little pink tongue and licked her lips. She looked at Noah with a fervent gaze. If I can taste the blood of a supreme being, there's nothing more blissful than that. Is that so? Noah said indifferently. Then, if I say that I don't mind letting you have a taste, will you obediently listen to me and stand there without moving? Although it's a very charming proposal, that won't do. Satya revealed a bloodthirsty smile. Since Sir Noah attacked me, then no matter what, I have to do my best to kill you. Why? Noah asked in return. Why do you have to do your best to kill me when I attack you? Am I not the master you should be loyal to even if you have to give up your life? Why? The smile on Satya's face froze slightly, and she frowned as though she was confused by her own thoughts. That's right. Why would I fight Sir Noah? Shouldn't Sir Noah be the master I should be loyal to even if I have to give up my life? Why would I do something so disrespectful? After being confused for a while, Satya suddenly smiled. Although I don't know why, since it's already started, there's no reason not to continue, right? You're right, Noah said self-deprecatingly. Since it's already started, there's no reason not to continue. Ah ha ha ha. Satya laughed joyfully. That's right. That's it. The instant she said that, a shocking bloody light suddenly erupted from Satya's body. Within the bloody light, Satya's figure slowly changed. No, it should be said that Satya's clothes slowly changed. The original red and black princess dress suddenly disappeared. It was replaced by a set of armor. It was a set of dark red full-body armor that seemed to be dyed in blood and gave off a bone-chilling feeling. The full-body armor tightly wrapped around Satya's body without any gaps. There was only a hole on her face, exposing her face to the air. It looked like a helmet. The helmet was like a swan's head, with bird-like feathers protruding from the left and right sides. There were also winged ornaments hanging from the chest to the shoulders. The lower half of the body was a bright red battle skirt. It wasn't just a piece of equipment, but a set of defensive equipment made up of many pieces of equipment. Moreover, every piece of that set of defensive equipment was at the legendary grade. When combined, they could display power close to the divine artifact level. Now that she was fully geared in legendary equipment, she looked like a bona fide Valkyrie. Her originally noble image had transformed into an extremely dignified one. Those who knew Satya would definitely understand. With this set of defensive equipment, the guardian with the strongest one-on-one combat ability in Nazarik's underground tomb would truly display her strength. There was no other reason. The structure of Satya's professions was almost all about strengthening combat ability. Among these professions, there was a profession that specialized in combat ability Valkyrie. Satya, who had entered a complete combat state, was now about to display the power of this profession. In that case, the preparations are complete. Opening her eyes, Satya held the pike tightly and grinned at Noah. Then, I'm going. With that, Satya stomped her feet on the ground, and her figure almost turned into a black line as she charged at Noah. Looking at the scene of Satya rushing at him with a bloodthirsty smile, Noah slowly clenched the red gauntlet covering his arm. The next moment, the pike that Satya had thrust out carried a fierce wind and an ear-piercing sound as it stabbed at Noah's head. Just like before, Satya had no intention of showing mercy at all. Thus, Noah clenched his fist tightly, allowing the vigorous power to condense on the gauntlet. Boost! The familiar voice sounded again. Noah's aura suddenly doubled. Immediately, Noah took a step forward. His ferocious gauntlets carried a vigorous force as they heavily smashed towards the long spear that was thrusting towards him. Clang! The collision between the spear and the gauntlet gave rise to a crisp sound of metal clashing. The sharp tip of the spear collided with the ferocious fist, causing an extremely violent ripple of energy to burst out from the point of collision between the sharp tip of the spear and the ferocious gauntlet. Kacha! Suddenly, a crack appeared on the ground beneath Noah and Satya's feet. Chapter 12:29. Without using the Demon Slayer and the Gate of Babylon, Noah could match the level 100 Zaisha with his own strength alone. However, that was under the condition that Zaisha did not use any equipment. Now, Zaisha had equipped the Dropper Pike, a divine artifact, and was even wearing legendary equipment. Some of the equipment from Yggdrasil were magical equipment that could display unusual effects and functions, while others did not have such effects. Zaisha's Dropper Pike belonged to the former, while the crimson armor on her body belonged to the latter. However, the equipment from the game had a very common characteristic. That was, it could increase the attributes of the equipment user. In view of this, the strength of the fully armed Zaisha suddenly soared. Clang! Amidst the bell-like sound of metal colliding, the impact of the violent collision not only caused a crack to burst open on the ground, but it also forced both Noah and Zaisha back. However, Zaisha was forced back several steps. On the other hand, Noah only took half a step back before stabilizing his body. Although Zaisha's strength had soared after being fully armed, Noah's strength had also soared by several times under the effect of the boosted gear. In the end, Noah still had the upper hand. It's not over yet. Zaisha suddenly stepped forward while retreating, and her body once again shot out like a sharp arrow. She swung the huge pike in her hand, and with a burst of extremely oppressive wind, she repeatedly stabbed at Noah's body. His field of vision was covered by dazzling spear shadows. Noah's eyes hardened as he withdrew his feet. While he was still retreating in midair, his arm, which was covered by the ferocious crimson hand armor, was waved and violently deflected the many spear shadows that were thrusting towards him. Clang, 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 clang. On the vast plain, the crisp sound of metal clashing echoed in the air, lingering for a long time. What's wrong with you, Lord Noah? Why aren't you fighting back? Ahahaha. Shadya, who was in a position where she was constantly attacking, repeatedly thrust the Dropper Pike in her hand in a violent manner while staring at Noah, who had a calm expression on his face as he deflected the incoming attacks one by one. She laughed provocatively. What about the overwhelming power you displayed when you faced all of us guardians alone in the throne room? Could it all be fake? Noah ignored Satya's provocation and only flicked away the spear that was thrusting at him. His expression didn't even change. Looking at the calm Noah, Satya became impatient. If that's the case, then let me kill you. After saying that, Zaisha suddenly stopped and extended her hand towards Noah. Wang! Amidst the trembling of space, 3 ring-shaped magic arrays suddenly overlapped and revolved in front of Satya's palm. Magic Enhancement Crimson Nova. A circle of crimson flames rose from the center of the magic array. The crimson flames began to expand like ripples. Then, in the space around Noah, who was retreating, the same flame suddenly appeared. It instantly enveloped Noah's entire body and exploded. Bang! Amidst the explosion, Noah's entire body was engulfed in raging flames, and he was roasted by the scorching flames. However, Satya's eyes suddenly widened. There was no other reason. It was because in the flames, whose temperature was comparable to the magma of an erupting volcano, Noah seemed to be unaffected. His body carried traces of heat from the flames as he slowly raised his foot and stomped down. With a bang, Noah's figure shot out of the scorching flames and approached Satya in a breath. Satya's expression changed and her pupils shrank. She didn't have time to consider why her magic was ineffective against Noah. She hurriedly raised the pipette pike and fiercely swung it at the figure shooting over. Noah, who had turned into a lightning-like black shadow, seemed to have sensed the ferocious energy coming toward him. His body instantly moved horizontally, and with a spin, he appeared behind Satya as if he was performing an elegant dance. In the next second, Noah's body spun slightly, and he clenched his fists that were covered in crimson gloves. The powerful force caused a gust of wind to swirl around, and as Noah's fist swung out, it formed a sonic boom that blasted toward Zaisha's back. Sensing the terrifying energy coming from behind, Taya's expression changed again and again as she screamed. Impure impact shield. Blood-like crimson energy ripples suddenly spread out from Taya's body and turned into a barrier that protected Taya inside. Bang! With a muffled boom, Noah's terrifying punch smashed into the energy barrier. The resulting shockwave turned into waves of wind that spread out in all directions. Immediately after, a cracking sound rang out from the energy barrier. It was the sound of the energy barrier protecting Taya inside cracking. What? Taya was shocked. My impure impact shield actually cracked? On the other side, Noah's brows furrowed slightly. It didn't shatter? Muttering those words, Noah's figure once again spun around. Relying on his LV.4 and SSS rank, agility, and dexterity, he was like a phantom that constantly flashed around Shadya's body. While he was dodging, Noah's fists, which contained a terrifying strength chi, continuously blasted out, one after another, hitting the impure impact shield that protected Taya. Under Noah's almost non-stop attack, a series of muffled bang 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 sounds continuously shook the energy barrier around Taya without any interruption. Every time a muffled sound shook, the energy barrier around Taya would crack with a crack sound. Under such circumstances, Taya really didn't dare to believe it. If she was directly hit by such a punch, even if she was wearing legendary-grade equipment, she would definitely be injured. After all, Taya's impure impact shield was not a magic spell, but a special skill. This special skill could be used for both defense and attack. When used for defense, its defensive power was enough to surpass level 10 magic. When used for attack, its offensive power was enough to surpass Taya's pipette pike. Such a powerful special skill could only be used twice a day by Taya. Such a barrier actually cracked under Noah's punch. One could imagine how terrifying Noah's punch was. It must be the power of the Crimson Gauntlet. Otherwise, even Lord Noah wouldn't be able to crack the impure impact shield with an ordinary attack. Could it be a world-class item? Taya's guess was only half correct. Noah's ordinary punch could have such power because of the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, which increased his strength 3 times. With LV.4 and an SSS level blessing in all aspects, Noah's physical ability had been multiplied 3 times. One could imagine how terrifying it was. However, Noah's Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear was not a world-class item, but a weapon imitated by weapon refinement. Boost! Suddenly, Noah's gauntlet made a sound again. The 4th multiplier ability was activated. Noah stomped on the ground and charged straight at Zaisha. His body spun and he leaped into the air. Only then did Noah's aura suddenly soar by 2-fold. Immediately after, under Taya's narrowed pupils, the fist covered by the Crimson Gauntlet carried an incomparably fierce force, creating a sharp sonic boom as it smashed down on the energy barrier. Bang! A muffled sound that was louder than any of the previous sounds resounded in the sky. Chapter 1230. Bang! Amidst the deafening explosion, a violent shockwave erupted from the cracked energy barrier around Satya. The shockwave swept away the dust on the ground, breaking it inch by inch. Bang! Without any suspense, Noah's punch, which had been amplified 4 times by the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, caused the blood-like energy barrier to shatter like glass. It shattered into pieces and scattered in all directions. Then Noah's body turned, and his leg suddenly flew out, landing heavily on Zaisha's body. Dong! The terrifying power sent Satya flying like a rubber ball. She rubbed against the air and heavily slammed into the ground in the distance. She smashed through the rock layer and stirred up a dense cloud of dust. The ground looked like it had been hit by a meteorite, and a crater appeared. Poochie! In the crater, Satya spat out a mouthful of blood. The crimson full-body armor on her body cracked open. Everyone suddenly fell silent. In front, Noah raised his eyes and looked at Satya, who was deep in the crater. He watched as blood seeped out of the corners of her mouth. His eyes flickered slightly as he sighed. "Give up, Satya. You're no match for me." Although Noah's words did not contain much confidence, it was precisely because they did not contain any emotion that they gave off the most realistic feeling. Cough, cough, cough. Satya covered her chest and coughed as she slowly stood up from the crater with difficulty. She looked at Noah and revealed a coquettish smile. "That's true. You're indeed worthy of being the supreme and invincible sovereign that I'm willing to sacrifice my life for. You're the supreme ruler of the underground tomb of Nasarek. With such power, you're the absolute overlord of this world. Provoking you is more foolish than provoking a dragon." While saying that, Satya did not have any intention of giving up. Instead, the bloodthirst on her face became even stronger. "Undoubtedly, I know this clearly. Why do I feel that I can't give up the battle with you? Why do I feel that I have to kill you? I really don't understand." "Is that so?" Noah closed his eyes. "In other words, you don't intend to surrender?" "Of course." Satya pointed the pike in her hand at Noah and laughed coquettishly. "I've been looking forward to Sir Noah being able to love me. I finally got this opportunity, so how can I give it up?" Hearing that, Noah was silent for a while. After a while, he opened his eyes and looked at Satya with determination. "If that's the case, then let me pull down the curtain of this boring battle." After saying that, Noah raised the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear. Boost. Multiplication. The voice that represented the activation of the fifth multiplication ability echoed from the jade of the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear. The limit of the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, which was created by Noah's weapon refinement, was 5 boosts. Therefore, from the beginning of the battle until now, 50 seconds had passed, and the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear was finally able to display its greatest power. The reason why Noah had not used the Demon Slayer and the Gate of Babylon was because he was waiting for this moment. Thus, Noah chanted a contract in the Elven language. "Cold Queen of Steel, the holy sword that slays demons." Noah pulled out the silver dagger from his back and placed it in his right hand, equipped with the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear. "Turn into a sword of steel and bestow me with divine power." A dazzling white light burst out from the silver dagger. Amidst the light, the highest-grade elven equipment named Demon Slayer appeared in its complete form. It turned into a shining silver holy sword and was held tightly by a ferocious red dragon-shaped gauntlet. "That's..." Zaisha's pupils shrank. "Aster." Zaisha was not familiar with the elven girl named Aster, but she was not a stranger either. She was not familiar with Aster because ever since she flew out of Noah's bed in the form of a sword and fought with the Guardians, Zaisha had never seen Aster again. She was not unfamiliar because of jealousy. She was jealous that Aster could become Noah's weapon. Not only Zaisha, but even Yairbead was extremely jealous of Aster. For Yairbead and Zaisha, who had special feelings for Noah, just the title of becoming Noah's weapon was enough to arouse their jealousy. Not to mention, because Aster was a weapon, she was carried by Noah at all times. They even slept together, which made Yairbead and Zaisha jealous for a while. If they could be like Aster and transform into a weapon and be used by Lord Noah, it would be too fortunate. This was the truest thought of Yairbead and Zaisha after knowing of Aster's existence. Therefore, although Zaisha had only seen Aster once, she had never forgotten the existence of this elven girl. Of course, there was another reason why she had such a deep impression. That was, back then, Aster had fought with all the Guardians in the form of a sword and was not at a disadvantage. At that time, all the Guardians were not wearing any equipment, and because the battlefield was in Noah's room, they did not even use their true strength. However, being able to fight against 6 Guardians was enough to prove Aster's strength. She was definitely not weaker than a world-class weapon. This fact made Zaisha extremely vigilant. Unfortunately, Noah had been holding back and not using the Demon Slayer not only because he wanted to let it display the power of a world-class weapon. Transfer. Following this voice, the power of the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, which had been multiplied 5 times, was all transferred to the Demon Slayer. Immediately, the holy sword that had annihilated the Demon King trembled and released an astonishing light. That light illuminated the entire world. At this moment, the power of the strongest sword Elven had multiplied 5 times, increasing to an unprecedented level. With this level of power, even the mind control of a world-class item can be removed in an instant. As soon as his voice fell, Noah, who was holding the Demon Slayer that was emitting an unprecedentedly strong light, leaned forward, shook, and turned into a black shadow that shot toward Zaisha. That speed was simply like a bolt of lightning. The terrifying speed shocked Zaisha again and again, and she could not hide her shock as she shouted, "Impure Impact Shield!" A blood-red energy barrier shook out from Zaisha's body and covered her. Absolute Sword Skill Initial Form Purple Lightning. The lightning-like thrust landed on the energy barrier. Bang! Couldn't even hold on for a second before the energy barrier suddenly exploded. Wah! Zaisha turned pale with fright. She hurriedly flapped the bat-like wings on her back and retreated. However, at this moment, golden ripples suddenly fluctuated in the space around Zaisha, and chains shot out. They stretched out and wrapped around Zaisha's limbs, forcibly restraining her body. This time, Zaisha did not even have time to react. Poochie! The white-eyed holy sword that was shining with an unprecedentedly strong and dazzling light pierced through Zaisha's chest. Rich white light enveloped Zaisha's body. Ah! Zaisha's sorrowful cry resounded through the sky. Chapter 12:31. Shadia, who was clad in a crimson armor, was enveloped by the dazzling white radiance of the Demon Slayer. She wailed in agony as though she had been struck by lightning. She looked as though she had also been purified by the Demon Slayer. Wisps of black aura emanated from her body. Noah, who was holding the Demon Slayer tightly, maintained the posture of piercing through Satya's chest with the elven device in his hand. He looked up at Satya, who was crying out in pain in the white light as though she had been struck by lightning. He gritted his teeth, and the divine power in his body intensified as he poured it into the silver holy sword in his hand. Clang! After the Demon Slayer was strengthened by the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear 5 times in a row. In addition to the massive amount of divine power, the white radiance emanating from it was so dazzling that it burned one's eyes. Under this situation, Shadia, who was enveloped by the dazzling white radiance of the Demon Slayer, as though she had been struck by lightning, released wisps of black aura from her body, and her wails became even more intense. From a distance, it was as though a white sun had appeared on the vast plain, dazzling and resplendent. The dazzling white radiance gushed out like a tide and enveloped the entire space. At that moment, the monsters that were lying in ambush in the plain and sealed off Shadia's surroundings in accordance with Noah's orders were drowned by the dazzling white radiance. These demonic creatures also involuntarily appeared from the darkness and let out beast-like cries. There was nothing they could do about it. After all, the Demon Slayer had a curse resistance that could break all curses. It was simply the natural enemy of these monsters who had negative energy that was completely opposite to their life force. Even Demon King Solomon, who had inherited the power of the Dark Elf King and was devoured by the power of the Dark Elf King, couldn't resist the power of the Demon Slayer, let alone these monsters. What's more, the power of the Demon Slayer had increased 5-fold from the beginning to the end. Fortunately, at that moment, the power of the Demon Slayer wasn't directed at these monsters in the underground tomb of Nazareth. Otherwise, all the monsters here, including the few level 85 monsters, would have been cleansed by the power of the Demon Slayer, leaving nothing behind. As a result, amidst all kinds of bestial roars, the dazzling white radiance that enveloped the entire space finally stopped expanding. After an unknown amount of time, the white radiance that enveloped the entire vast plain gradually dimmed. Immediately, The monsters whose negative energy was surging due to the power of the demon slayer looked at the center of the dim white radiance with lingering fear. There, Noah, who was holding the demon slayer, was still in the posture of piercing the silver holy sword into Satya's body. His head was lowered, and the bangs on his forehead covered his expression. On the other hand, Zaisha also lowered her head and returned to her marionette-like state. Hum! With a trembling sound, the huge thorny spear in Satya's hand and the crimson full-body armor on her body seemed to have turned into a mirage and disappeared in a flash. Bang! On Noah's right hand that was holding the demon slayer, the Longinus, which was called the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, also shattered into pieces like glass and disappeared with a shattering sound. Ugh! Satya let out a muffled groan. Her delicate body softened, and she slowly fell down. It was not until this moment that Noah finally made a move. After pulling the demon slayer out of Satya's body, Noah hugged Satya, who had collapsed on him, and knelt on one knee on the ground. Everyone suddenly fell silent. Ugh! After an unknown period of time, Satya let out a groan and slowly opened her scarlet eyes. Noah, who was holding Satya in his arms, immediately looked into her eyes. At this moment, there was no longer the emptiness in her eyes, nor was there the madness from before. There was only endless exhaustion. Ah! Satya also opened her eyes and met Noah's gaze. She was stunned on the spot. Sir? Noah? Upon hearing the familiar voice, Noah secretly heaved a sigh of relief and asked, "What's the matter? How do you feel?" "How do I feel?" Satya seemed to be a little confused for a moment, and she seemed to be unable to grasp the situation. She just opened her tired eyes and spoke weakly. "I feel so tired. Tired." For an Undying, this was absolutely an incredible thing. Because the Undying didn't feel fatigue and didn't need to eat or drink. As the true ancestor of vampires, who was at the top of the Undying, it was really inconceivable that Satya would feel tired. Of course, if it was mental fatigue, it would be a different story. However, looking at Saty's powerless appearance, it was clear that this vampire girl wasn't just mentally exhausted. She was definitely physically exhausted as well. However, this was not strange at all. As an Undying, Satya's body was also full of negative energy, which was the opposite of life force. Under the direct attack of the demon slayer, the negative energy in Satya's body was purified to the extreme, which caused Satya to feel extremely tired like ordinary people. However, Satya's mental control was also lifted. Therefore, Satya looked at Noah blankly. "Why am I here? Why is Sir Noah here? You don't need to think about anything. Have a good rest first." Noah stroked Satya's silver-gray hair. "When you wake up, you'll understand everything." If it were in the past, as the guardian of Nazarik's underground tomb, Zaisha wouldn't have fallen asleep in front of the person she had given everything she had to serve. However, the accumulated fatigue in Satya's body seemed to be quite strong, so the vampire girl nodded weakly, closed her beautiful eyes, and slowly fell asleep. Looking at Satya, who had fallen asleep in his arms, Noah carried her in a princess carry. "Let's go back, Satya." The noble little princess-like girl did not respond to Noah's words. She just laid in Noah's arms with a serene expression. In the underground tomb of Nasarik, a group of NPCs looked at the screen in the air and fell silent as they watched Noah carrying Satya in his arms. Demiurgo sighed and said so. Sir Noah's overwhelming victory. That's right. Yul was also in a daze. Even Satya, who is the strongest in one-on-one combat among the Guardians, was not a match for Sir Noah even when she was fully armed. 50 seconds. Cositas spat out white gas. Sir Noah defeated Satya in such a short amount of time. Really? Marley was a little depressed. Too strong. The group of NPCs fell silent. Then, Sebastian said, "That's right. Does such a powerful supreme really need the loyalty of lowly people like us?" This was the reason why the NPCs fell silent. I hope everyone will remember today's lesson. Yair Bade looked at Noah on the screen and said in an unprecedentedly serious tone, "Next time, I won't allow you to be as useless as you were this time." The group of NPCs nodded resolutely. Chapter 1232. As mentioned earlier, the underground tomb of Nassarik was mainly divided into 10 floors, and all of them were located underground. On the ground, the underground tomb of Nassarik was an extremely vast graveyard. The graveyard was surrounded by a huge wall that was 6 meters thick. The wall was circular. There was an entrance at the front and back of the wall. Inside the wall, the huge graveyard seemed to have sunk into the earth, and it looked like a basin. In the graveyard, in addition to neatly trimmed weeds and many messy tombstones, there were also dense trees. The scene that seemed to form a forest complemented the surrounding neatly trimmed weeds and messy tombstones, creating a strong sense of contrast. Not only that, but there were also exquisite carvings of angels and goddesses everywhere in the graveyard. The carvings of angels and goddesses were extremely exquisite and breathtaking. Moreover, it could be seen at a glance that someone was carrying out regular maintenance. In contrast, the towering trees in the graveyard were crooked and drooped, brewing a gloomy atmosphere. Then, in the graveyard, there was an ancestral hall in each of the 4 corners of the graveyard. Surrounded by the 4 ancestral halls, there was an extremely large ancestral hall in the center of the graveyard. This large ancestral hall was the entrance to the underground tomb of Nassarik. Noah, who was carrying Satya, slowly descended from the air with the help of a magic tool with the power of flight, and landed in this strange graveyard. Whoosh! Almost immediately, monsters of different shapes and sizes flashed out from the shadows around the graveyard, their bodies surging with an evil aura. These monsters were at least level 50 and above. Therefore, once an outsider stepped into the graveyard, these monsters of at least level 50 and above would instantly appear and take down any outsider. However, when they saw the full appearance of the newcomer, the demonic creatures that were surging with evil aura all paused for a moment. Then, they knelt or prostrated themselves in unison, offering Noah their vassal. Noah ignored the monsters around him. He only carried the sleeping Satya and walked towards the central ancestral hall. When Noah walked out of sight, the monsters of at least level 50 and above seemed to have merged into the surrounding shadows and disappeared, continuing to guard the entrance to the underground tomb of Nassarik. Not long after, Noah, who was carrying Satya, stepped onto the steps of the ancestral hall. Lord Noah. At the entrance of the ancestral hall, Yacht, Mare, Cassette, Demiugos, Sebastian, and a group of combat maids were all present. They bowed in the direction of Noah. "Welcome back." Noah nodded casually and then looked at Yerbeda. "Although judging from the situation, Satya should be fine, let me confirm it for the time being." "Yes, Lord Noah," Yacht reported as he stepped forward and lowered his head. "I have just confirmed the list of NPCs in the throne room's management system. Satya's name has indeed returned to its original white color. It is no longer red-black, which was hostile when she was in the state of mind. Based on this, Satya's problem should be resolved." "That's good." Noah's expression softened slightly. "That is true, but it is also true that Satya was hostile to the Supreme One." Yair Bade looked at Noah, and his eyes, which were glowing with golden light, flickered slightly. "Lord Noah, shouldn't we punish Satya?" Noah furrowed his brows when he heard Yair Bade's words. He raised his head and looked at the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nassarik. Only then did Noah notice that these NPCs who were loyal to him seemed to have changed. The change here wasn't in their appearance, but in their atmosphere. In the past, when these NPCs faced Noah, they would have an atmosphere of respect and worship. Now, not only did the reverence and worship become even more intense, there was also a trace of a different feeling mixed in. It was a feeling that came after they gained tenacious determination and strong willpower. It seemed that during the battle between Noah and Satya, these NPCs in the underground tomb of Nassarik had gained some benefits. "Please forgive me for interfering with Lord Noah's decision." Under Noah's gaze, Yach said so. For a force, the distinction between reward and punishment is the most important issue. It is also common sense in the world. Even if Satya was disrespectful to Lord Noah involuntarily, a mistake is a mistake. If there is no punishment, the subordinates won't take it as a warning. Who knows, when the same thing happens again, the others will use this as an excuse to weaken their willpower. The success rate of mind domination was also related to the strength of an individual's willpower. If one's willpower was strong, then even if they were under mind domination, they would be able to resist it. Take Satya, for example. Even when her mind was under control, she could still rely on her tenacious willpower to resist and counterattack the caster. This resulted in the enemy being unable to give orders to Satya and could only make the helpless decision of abandoning her. Knowing that they will be punished for making such a mistake, even if they are under mind domination, in order to not be punished, everyone will resist so that the situation won't become too unfavorable. Demiurgos continued Yach's words. As such, this subordinate also believes that Lord Noah should give Satya an appropriate punishment as a warning. It's not just this incident, Seabass said in a deep voice. In the future, no matter what happens that will implicate the Supreme Sovereign, we hope that Lord Noah can give us the harshest punishment. Immediately, Yach, Mare, Cositas, and the other NPCs in the underground tomb of Nasaric all nodded. Hearing this, Noah finally understood. Yach and the others suggested that Noah punish Satya not only because of the so-called fair rewards and punishments, but also because they wanted to express their determination. They were determined not to cause trouble for Noah and drag him down. Moreover, if I am under mind domination and betray Lord Noah, then even if Lord Noah forgives me, I won't forgive myself. Yach revealed a sincere and gentle smile. I'm sure Satya will feel the same way, right? If it is someone who is loyal to Lord Noah, then under such circumstances, there is no one who would not feel guilty, Demiurgos said. This subordinate believes that if Lord Noah punishes Satya, then the guilt in her heart will disappear. On the contrary, if Lord Noah doesn't punish Satya, then the guilt in her heart will definitely haunt her, right? This was indeed true. After all, punishment also meant forgiveness. No matter what mistakes one made, after being punished, it was as good as written off. In this place, even if it was for Satya's sake, Chun Zhao had to follow Yach and the other suggestions. Even though he knew this, Noah's frown deepened. The reason was simple. Noah was partly responsible for Satya's mind domination. Punish Satya? If that was the case, what would Noah do about the guilt in his heart? Noah, who felt a headache coming on, could only sigh and look at Yach. Let me think about it first. In any case, Satya hasn't woken up yet. When she wakes up, tell her to come find me. Understood. Yach and the others immediately lowered their heads. Seeing this, Noah walked past Yair Bedard and the others and walked into the large underground tomb in Nasaric. The NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasaric hurriedly followed. At this moment, Noah suddenly spoke. Demiurgos, think of a way to find out the location of the capital of the Celian cult. Yes. Demiurgos was startled at first, but he quickly responded after reacting. May I know what Lord Noah plans to do? Isn't that obvious? Noah continued to walk forward without looking back. As he walked, he spoke faintly. You came to my territory to do as you please. Out of etiquette, I should also pay you a visit. Chapter 12:33. On the day that the battle between Noah and Zaisha ended, a small change was also taking place in Yelantir. Recalling the huge commotion that he had heard when he sneaked into Yelantir, a person wearing a black robe whose figure seemed to have blended into the moonlight slightly lifted his face that was covered by the hood of the black robe. He opened his mouth and revealed a crazy and sinister smile. Seems like that side is more interesting. These words rang out softly from under the hoodie. From the voice, it was easy to recognize that the other party was a woman. The woman in the black robe was immersed in her own world. No one knew what she thought of, but she kept laughing creepily as she walked forward. Upon closer inspection, The place where the black-robed person was actually a huge cemetery. This graveyard belonged to Yi Lantir. Moreover, it was a huge cemetery with an outer city wall that occupied almost half of the western area of Yi Lantir. Presumably, even compared to the other countries, the scale of this cemetery was very large, right? This was a scale that appeared to suppress the birth of the undead. The undead were a race that was born from death. Therefore, as long as there was a place where the living were dying, it was possible for the undead to be born. According to research, people had discovered that the probability of the dead who died an unnatural death or had no one to mourn was quite high. Therefore, in places like battlefields and ruins, the undead would often appear. Yi Lantir's location bordered the borders of the kingdom, empire, and theocracy. Not to mention the theocracy for the time being, because the kingdom and empire were at war all year round. This city that bordered the borders of the two countries was extremely special. For example, the battlefield where the kingdom and empire fought was very close to Yi Lantir. The soldiers who died on the battlefield, regardless of the number or cause of death, were enough to give birth to a large number of undead. In view of this, in order to prevent the dead from becoming undead, a cemetery that people could mourn became rather important. This was the reason why Yi Lantir's cemetery was built so large. Of course, even if this was the case, undying beings would often be born here. It was one of the places that no one was willing to visit. Under such circumstances, the black-robed man walked unscrupulously in the cemetery. Soon, he arrived in front of an ancestral hall and removed the hood on his head. What appeared under the hood was the pretty face of a young girl in her prime. The girl's facial features were regular, and her appearance could be considered cute. However, on that cute face hung a dangerous smile like that of a carnivorous beast. With such a smile, the girl pushed open the stone door of the ancestral hall with light steps. She entered the ancestral hall and came to the stone pedestal where the corpse was placed. The young girl walked up to the stone pedestal and pressed down on a small, inconspicuous carving at the bottom of the stone pedestal with a relaxed movement that didn't make one think that she would appear in a graveyard or an ancestral hall. Kacha! The sculpture sank as the girl moved. Immediately afterward, the stone seat trembled and slowly opened like a door, revealing a flight of stairs leading to the underground in front of the young girl. Hee hee. The girl giggled as if she found it interesting. Moreover, she didn't hesitate to walk down the gloomy underground stairs that would make ordinary girls shrink back. She arrived at an extremely vast empty space. The walls and floor were made of artificially treated earth. It was unknown if there was wind, but the air was quite fresh. However, inside the empty space, there was a strange carpet hanging on the wall. Moreover, there was a candlestick that seemed to be dyed red with blood. The candles inside were lit and emitted a faint flame. The swaying candlelight made the girl's shadow stretch on the walls and floor. The girl walked with clear steps and arrived at the bottom of the empty space. Looking around, the girl's gaze stopped at a place after a while. Her giggling voice echoed in the surroundings without any concealment. Tisk! The girl's unpleasant giggling attracted a speechless sound that contained displeasure. That was the sound of someone being easily discovered. Moreover, it was the sound of someone being easily discovered by someone they hated. Under such a speechless sound, a thin man slowly walked out from the shadows where the girl was looking. It was a man with sunken eyes and no hair. It was impossible to determine his age. He wore a long robe and wore a necklace made of small animal skulls around his neck. His body was so thin that only skin and bones were left. He also held a black staff. Rather than calling him a human, it would be better to call him a skinny skeleton. Hi! The girl warmly greeted the skeleton man. I'm here to see you, little Kaji. My name is Kadget, not little Kaji. The skeleton man who called himself Kadget said with an unpleasant voice. Celian Theocracy's Special Intelligence Unit, Dark Scriptures Clementine. What are you doing here? I'm no longer a member of the Dark Scripture. The girl named Clementine said with a frivolous tone. I'm here to tell you a piece of good news, little Kaji. A piece of good news that will be of great help to your goal. Hearing this, Kadget narrowed his eyes. Kadjit was a magic chanter that specialized in the study of the undead. That was why Kadjit stayed in this kind of place. Of course, the reason why Kadjit stayed here wasn't as simple as just researching the undying. He wanted to create an undying that wouldn't tire, didn't need to eat or drink, and had an immortal life. Usually, in places where the undead gathered, there would be powerful undead. If there were powerful undead gathered, then there would be even more powerful undead. Using this characteristic, in theory, as long as there were enough undead, then in the end, there would definitely be a terrifying undead king that was strong enough to make all the races in the world despair. Kadjit's goal was to turn Yelantir into a ghost town. By collecting the negative energy in the ghost town, he could create a large number of undead, and even make himself an undead existence. The girl named Clementine clearly knew Kadjit's goal. That was why she said that. Did you know? Clementine giggled. It's said that recently, the Adventurers Guild discovered a super powerful undying being and sent out 3 teams of secret silver-ranked adventurers as leaders. A total of more than 200 Adventurers Guild members went on a crusade against the undying being. In the end, those people ran back scared witless today, causing Yelantir to almost fall into chaos. Hearing this, Kadjit's eyes flashed as he stared closely at Clementine. Is what you said true? It's true, it's true. Of course it's true. Clementine said with a tone that made people feel like she was joking. Also, it said that the super powerful undead seems to be a servant that someone summoned with summoning magic. Oh, Kadjit asked with interest. Then what rank of undead summoning magic did that person use? 3rd rank? Or 4th rank? Little Kadjit, you've become stupid. The smile on Clementine's face gradually became uninteresting as she said exaggeratedly. That's a magic chanter that could force back more than 200 adventurers led by 3 teams of mithril rank adventurers. Just a servant alone made the Adventurers Guild feel like they're facing a great enemy. It even turned the leader of one of the mithril rank adventurers into a steel statue in an instant. How could it only be a 3rd or 4th rank trash? The corners of Kadjit's eyes twitched slightly. There was no other reason. The highest rank of undead summoning magic that Kadjit used was only a 3rd rank magic. Hey, little Kadjit, don't you want to meet that person? Clementine invited as if she had good intentions. Perhaps you can obtain the secret to summoning such a powerful undead from him. It's very likely that he's like you, only able to use low-rank summoning magic, but can use precious magical tools to increase the power of his summoning magic. Perhaps that's how he can summon such a powerful undead? What she meant was for Kadjit to snatch it from him. Is that so? Kadjit rolled his eyes and sneered at Clementine. But what's in it for you? Do you even need to ask? Clementine smiled cheerfully. Of course it's interesting. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.